that.
Okay, Tyler?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay,
please do.
great.
I was kind of hoping you would.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
refer back to it.
Sure, I got my notes up. Oh, look at that. It works. That's so great.
Yay!
Ta-da.
Yay! Awesome. Well, hi everyone. I'm really excited to be here with all of you and those of you joining online. And the train up here. Thank you. Where is the railroad? Just like right there.
Yeah.
Awesome. I will talk over that as it comes by. Those of you online, if you see me like step to the side, it's because I'm looking at the screen up here. So sorry if that looks weird. Well, I'm excited to be here with all of you. Is it working? We're good?
Yep.
Awesome. Cool. I've been with Nickney, as I said before, since 2023. And as we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about Nickney so you have some context if you haven't heard of them. And also what we do, which means it kind of leads into why I'm here with you today. Like, where did Tyler come from? I've had the fortune of working with Eric in the past when he worked for Ramp up in Illinois, or not up in Illinois, in Winnebago-ish area, Stevenson, and Ogle, right?
We were Winnebago, Boone, DeKalb,
Boone.
Stevenson.
That's right. Yeah. So Centers for Independent Living have been really important for me and just in my career. I love working with Centers for Independent Living. To me, they're one of the most important nonprofits. So any chance that I get to jump in and do continued work for independent living, it means a lot to me. And as part of the disability community, I just think it's really important that not only the visible ones, but the invisible ones are really, really well represented. So I have a migraine brain, which is super fun. So like I get all the neurological stuff that just kind of shuts you down for a few days at a time. And so I was actually in a conversation with Eric where I learned about, oh, cool. There's resources. There's like, I can learn, there's stuff that I can tap into. So thank you, Eric. You actually sent me down a very like long educational path and it's been life-changing. So thank you very, very much. So all that to say, I really appreciate you and all the work that you do. And any chance that I get to come and work with a nonprofit board, it means a lot to me. So what I want to do is set a little bit of the standard of what you guys can expect today from me, and also kind of the agenda moving forward. So as we go through today, I, for a while, worked as a youth pastor, which meant I got really used to that like call and response nature of things. And I like to carry that forward into how I do presentations even now. So my job today is not to stand up here and talk at you for 4 hours. Candidly, you would get bored. And I like my voice. I don't like my voice that much. That's a long time to talk and hear yourself bouncing off the walls. So what I'd like to do is if you have a question about anything as I'm going, either throw a hand up or even if you just want to like tap or rap on the table, that's a great way to get my attention. And then if you're online, if you just want to throw something in the chat, Tara is monitoring the chat and she'll let me know if you guys have any questions as well. So the reason for that is I might be in the middle of a thought, and once I finish that thought, then I'll come to your question. So does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Perfect. I'm going to assume that online said yes. You can't disagree from where you're at. Yeah.
Oh, just one thing I just want to share that I forgot to say earlier when I transitioned to you, Tyler, is one of the things about Tyler is that we picked and we went with Nickney is after our conversation was just because of our board. It is important for us. We are a nonprofit board, and Nickney and Tyler has a lot of experience on board and board development in general. But we focus on our disability community. So I felt very strongly, and Shelley agreed, that we wanted someone who understands board structure and board governance and nonprofit, but also has a strong connection to disability and understands our community. And after and learning that Tyler had worked with Eric and SILC, and he has experience with disability, and his connection to disability is one of the reasons why we feel very comfortable in inviting Nickney and him here for us, because it's that intersection and understanding. So I just wanted to also share a little bit of that conversation, and that that history as well, which is why, and I feel very hopeful that this will be a very productive conversation.
Thank you, Jaden. I appreciate that very, very much. Yeah, our conversation kind of led into my history with the disability community. To expand that a little bit, when I was 12, I broke my back, and I can walk, which is really, really cool. But I have some neurological damage from that as well on the left side of my body. So to be able to get up and move around is an absolute blessing. I'm very fortunate in that. But obviously that comes with complications, and I don't think anybody should be held back because of complications, especially ones that are outside of their control. So very honored to be here in this room. So yeah, as we transition into our topic for the day, my goal here is to teach you how to function as a really phenomenal board, right? Like at the end of the day, that's me doing my job. There's a few different things that we're going to touch on as we do that. Part of the reason we do it that way is because NICNE has some clear goals and some clear ways that we specifically help organizations. This is the education and training bit of what we do as a nonprofit supporting organization. So how many of you are familiar with NICNE? Have you heard of us? Oh, I obviously, yeah. Yeah, a few of you. Okay, do you mind if I touch on the history just a little bit? Because I think it might be beneficial.
Go ahead.
Great, awesome. So we were founded in 2004. I do not work for NICNE. I am an independent advisor, a professional advisor. Basically, that means that I have my own business and my own work, and I work with NICNE to support their ideal clients, people in not just the community up in Northern Illinois, but throughout all of the state and really anywhere else that needs some additional help. They exist to connect people with additional resources. So mission is to promote, model, and grow innovation, excellence, and social impact. That's why we exist. And I'm at the point now where I say we, because I feel like every day I'm kind of a part of NICNE and a part of the nonprofit community. So we focus on education and training. We focus on innovation, collaboration. We have a space called the Collab Lab. So if you ever find yourself up in Rockford, Illinois, and you're looking for a space to collaborate with other nonprofit leaders or nonprofit workers or people who just have needs in the community or in the ecosystem that you're focused on, the Collab Lab is a phenomenal space to do that. I use it regularly. And then finally, advocacy. Sometimes you just need some additional weight behind your voice, right? And one voice can be relatively loud. A lot of voices, hey, welcome in. A lot of voices altogether are much louder and much more impactful. And so NICNE gathers together people from different communities and advocates at the state level whenever necessary and as often as necessary. Welcome. Do we want to do our quick icebreaker as well?
Yep, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, TJ.
Hey, TJ.
So, we did a round of intros where we shared name, pronouns, and icebreaker question, which is, if there's a food, what food would you like to eliminate from existence?
So hi everyone. This is CJ Gordon, he, his pronouns. Foods that I would like to delete from existence. Mayo go bye-bye.
Nice. Next to the room.
Two mayos.
I respect it. I respect it.
But you know what's ironic? If you say garlic aioli, what's his fancy mayo?
Right?
I'll take
It
it.
works. You see,
Garlic.
that is how my wife is. She hates mayo, but if I make up garlic aioli, which is just garlic and mayo, basically, works well.
I've convinced myself it's not.
Oh yeah, I mean traditional aioli is radically different, but that's okay. So yeah, TJ, there's some food just through the door.
Yeah.
Grab up, have a seat. Welcome. Excited to have you here.
Soda's downstairs in the fridge.
Boom. So that is NICNE, kind of the 30,000 foot view of who we are, what we do. And the reason we like to kind of lead with that off front is we do more than governance training, but more than that, we just want to be kind of a first initial resource to operate as a connector between the needs that you have and some potentially really, really good and helpful resources. So if you have questions or need anything, NICNE's a good kind of first like, hey, Do you know anybody who does this? Yes, they probably do. So I'm sure several here in the room can attest to that. Okay, so here is the agenda for today. We're going to cover 4 primary topics, all under the banner of operating as a really effective, healthy, productive nonprofit board. We're going to start by going through some recent research from BoardSource, who has become kind of a not just a national, but a global authority on effective board governance. They're a great resource to pull from and learn from. And also, I should have said this up front. You will be provided with a copy of this slideshow. So you can always refer back to it if you want. It won't have my notes in there, but it'll have all of the general content. And then anything that I reference as like a PDF or a general guide, I will also provide for you as well. So, yeah. So within that, we'll cover that research, because I like to start with research because it kind of informs why we do what we do, but also why certain things work and certain things don't work very much. Then we'll talk about roles and responsibilities of a nonprofit board, the different roles that are on the team, but also really what's the responsibility of a board at all. We'll take a break right around then, about 10-15 minutes. Then we'll come back. We'll talk about board meetings and board meeting structure. We'll also talk about Robert's Rules of Order, which it is a lot. So we'll make it through that. I know that there will be questions. That is a group. I am expecting questions. And then once we've covered that, we'll probably take another quick break, and then we'll come back to the legal duties, and then we'll wrap everything up and adjourn for the day. So, any questions on the agenda?
I'm going to be stepping out for probably half hour, 45 minutes for maybe after the meeting for the council.
Great. Not a problem at all. Thank you for the heads up. Oh man, just got a eyelash in my eye. All right. So let's start here. This is Ann Walstead, a quote from Ann Walstead, who's the former CEO of BoardSource, and she said this in 2021. In the face of increasingly pressing system inequities, nonprofit boards. I don't know if you guys can hear the train, but it's really funny. Sorry.
Research.
Yeah, that's fair. Nonprofit boards must change the traditional ways they have worked and instead prioritize an organization's purpose, show respect for the ecosystem in which they operate, commit to equity, and recognize that power but be authorized by the people they're aiming to help. She said this back in 2021, and it is proving truer and truer, I feel, every single day as we do our work. Because obviously, as a nonprofit board, we're dedicated to some form of equitable outcome in the ecosystems that we provide. And for a long time, boards functioned, but they were oftentimes kind of a passive board. They weren't as deeply involved and engaged as we would want them to be. And now, as we critically need them to be, but in their lane, in their avenue of excellence and governance. So let's dig through it. This is a survey, or results from a survey of 820 CEOs and board chairs. And when BoardSource did this series of surveys, this is what we found. One, boards are disconnected from the communities and people they serve. They place a high priority on board members' knowledge of the community served. This is something that we learned via BoardSource, that largely boards felt communities that were being served by these boards felt like the board was doing stuff, but not necessarily for them. The board was operating and existed theoretically somewhere far away, but it wasn't necessarily targeted at their real community needs. Because those were the boards where you might hear about a board meeting once a year. Sometimes they show up at stuff. They've been on the board for like 90 years. That's it. And they're still doing things that were helpful back in 1960, as opposed to what is necessary right now in the ecosystem right now. And so what BoardSource identified as they surveyed all of these CEOs and nonprofit leaders was they need a board who is connected to the community that they are serving in some way, shape, or form. We benefit naturally in this room by being deeply connected to the disability community in some way, shape, or form. If for no other reason than how your bylaws structure, what percentage of your board has to be directly connected to that community. So we have that out the gate, which is a phenomenal place to be. We also found that boards that prioritize fundraising above all else when it comes to the board's role do so at the expense of strategy. We focus on the dollars and we don't focus on the strategy. We don't focus on relevance. We don't focus on impact. We focus on the dollar signs, which is not the singular purpose of a board. It is a critical function, but it's not the only thing. Executives reported that placing the highest level of importance on fundraising have lower ratings in several key areas of performance. So you can have all the dollars in the world, if we're to summarize what this finding is, you have all the money in the world and be woefully ineffective at actually accomplishing your mission and championing forward your vision. And so what we found through board sources, we need to rebalance that. We need to make sure that fundraising is still critically thought of, but it can't be more important than strategy and relevance and connection to your community. They need to be deeply connected and intimately molded together. So when you think of fundraising, you're thinking of it through the lens of strategy, of relevance, of communities that you are serving. We also found that boards and executives should reflect on what is prioritized in terms of board expectations and how time is spent. And this isn't something that should be assumed. This is something that should be regularly discussed and evaluated. Basically asking the question of, what are we doing with our time? What are we doing with our very limited resources? What are we doing with all of that? Instead of assuming what has been the case to be necessary moving forward, taking a step and kind of breaking the mold and asking, is this working? Is this right? Is this effective? This is something that all of these executives identified as something they wish that the board would take a moment, stop, and ask, and do that with some degree of regularity. And finally, the board shares leadership in ensuring that there are clear expectations of board service seems to matter most when it comes to the board's overall culture. So basically, those who are in a high position of leadership really do steer the ship. We identified that whoever's sitting in that chair, whether now or in the future, they impact how we function and operate, but they also kind of set the tone for not just the next 30 days, they set the tone for the next 3 years, even after they've stepped out of that role, because the decisions they make today will have an impact tomorrow, which impacts the day after that, and so on and so forth, even after the chair has changed to a different person over time. And so we've identified that to be the case pretty consistently, and Board Source did a great job of sourcing that information. Do you guys have any questions on what this survey found, any of these key findings? Also, if you need me to slow down, let me know. I have a tendency to talk a little fast. Okay. Anybody in the chat? No? Beautiful. Well, then let's jump on to, we learned from this information, we had these key findings, and then we were able to establish 4 core principles of purpose-driven board leadership. Instead of just being a passive board or being a exclusive governance-only board, which is how some people will talk about a board, or a board of trustees, a really effective nonprofit board will always come back to this foundational element of what is our purpose. They are purpose driven. They are moving in a singular direction instead of just kind of letting things happen around them. And so with that information, we got 4 key principles. 1, purpose before organization. The purpose comes first. The reality is most of the communities we serve and the ecosystems they function in, and a lot of the problems that they experience will long outlive us in some way, shape, or form. And oftentimes they outlive organizations, but they never outlive the purpose of the organization. And so if we are so focused on our organization being what it is, that we sacrifice purpose, we have it all backwards, right? We need to make sure that we keep purpose first. The core function of a board is to move forward in that purpose. So we need to constantly remind ourselves of our purpose. We also, the second principle would be respect for the ecosystem, acknowledging that the organization's actions can positively, or sometimes, and I know some people in here may have experienced this, can also very negatively affect the communities that they are serving and the surrounding ecosystems outside of that community, right? We need to respect the ecosystem that we are engaging in, not just the community that we're engaging in, but what is that community connected to? What other resources are they connected to? What other communities are impacted by the decisions that we make? Are we actually helping or are we harming? That, unfortunately, is something that we need to ask. And the boards that don't ask that question are the boards that you find out about years later, oh my gosh, they were doing what? Like I've read case study after case study of boards where I go, oh man, I just wish somebody had asked, is this helping or hurting? Things would have been different. They would have stopped and course corrected far, far earlier than later. So those are questions that we need to ask when we serve on a board such as this one. The third principle that we identify is an equity mindset. This needs to be consistent for everybody that is a member of the board. This idea that equity is the goal. This means that we're committed to advancing equitable outcomes, interrogating and avoiding the ways in which the organization's strategies and work may reinforce system inequities. I remember having a couple conversations with different people at RAMP where this was a core element of the work that I was doing there is, hey, as we're doing this work, is this the outcome that we want? And not just are we negatively impacting the communities in like surrounding the people that we're serving. As we do this, are we accidentally enabling division? Are we accidentally making it easier to discriminate against people? And especially for Centers for Independent Living, it can be really easy to slip into that on accident, right? We need to be mindful of the actions that we're taking so that we're not making it easier for people to feel like they're subhuman, right? Because nobody here in this room is subhuman. And no human outside of this room is subhuman. We're all just human, kind of stock standard. And it's really easy to accidentally, with good intentions, but accidentally find ourselves in a position where we're supporting inequity instead of equity. It's the job of the board to move towards equitable outcomes. The final principle is we operate as an authorized voice and power. And we need to take that responsibility incredibly seriously. As a member of this board, you've been granted a position of trust, of vulnerability, right? Like your community is benefiting or being harmed by the decisions that you make here in this room, or any boardroom for that matter, any committee for that matter. So we need to recognize that organizational power and voice must be authorized by those impacted by the organization's work. In other words, your voice needs to represent the people that you are aiming to serve. Not you, not the organization itself, but the community that you were dedicated to serving. If we bear these 4 principles in mind, it's shocking, but we end up being a really hyper-functional, effective board because we keep coming back to that singular goal of what's our purpose? What's the outcome that we're aiming for? Let's keep moving in that direction. So we're going to kind of explore these principles, these foundational elements as we go through today. Any questions before I move along? Beautiful. All right. So as a board, if our goal is to be purpose driven, which means that we're going to be hyper effective, we're going to make an actual difference in the work that we do in the communities that we serve, we naturally need to examine the questions that we ask. So on the left side of the screen there, we see what we would call traditional questions, questions that boards have been asking for time immemorial. And I want to be really clear, those questions aren't bad questions. They're great questions. But that doesn't mean that we can't ask better questions if we want to be purpose driven, because we've seen boards be functional. I don't know how many of you have served on boards where you go, yeah, I'm on this board, and we sit in rooms for hours on end, and sometimes we get things done, but sometimes I get really frustrated. Like I've been in those rooms, and even as a consultant stepping into those rooms, sometimes I go, oh my gosh, what are you doing? You're way off base. We're like, it's been 5 hours. And what? But if we take a step back and ask really, really good questions, makes things faster, makes us more effective. And as always, we keep coming back to purpose. So some of the traditional questions that we have asked are, what is best for our organization? Not a bad question. What is best for our organization? We also ask, how would this impact our organization? How would this impact us? How would this bill, this law impact us? How would this fundraising effort impact us? How will this speaking engagement impact us? How will it impact our organization? How will our strategy advance the mission that we are dedicated to? What do we think is best? And I think you're probably starting to note where I'm driving toward. The questions on the left organization, they're about you, which is a very small subset of the population you are aiming to serve. Questions on the right drive towards the community that we are engaged in. So we want to replace those questions. Instead of asking what is best for our organization, we want to ask things like, what is best for the desired social outcome we seek? What's the best path forward in general? And oftentimes this means some collaboration, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing for the social outcome that we are trying to enact in the world. How would this decision, this effort, this initiative, how would this impact all the players within our ecosystem to do the most good? How will this benefit not just our nonprofit, not even just our avenue of nonprofits, not even just our community? How will this impact other communities? I know that one of the benefits of being a SIL is you kind of collaborate with all of them in some way, shape, or form, right? Like you coordinate with different agencies, different nonprofits, different community centers that aren't just focused on independent living. You're focused on all of these other incredible things. Like the number of case managers I've seen who coordinate with SILs makes me so happy, because that is a beautiful collaboration. It's exactly what we want to see happen. And those people have asked this question: how would this decision to coordinate with them impact everyone in the ecosystem to do the most good? It's a phenomenal question to ask. How will our strategy create equitable outcomes? Instead of just asking, how will this champion forward our mission? We ask, how will this champion forward the outcome that we want to have? We're moving not just with mission, but through mission into that vision realm where we're talking about purpose and long-term impact. We're going to drive that direction. And then I know that that last one's a little long, but a good way to think of the question of our board is our board populated in a way that ensures that power is authorized by and inclusive of the community impacted by the work we do? Are we doing all we can to listen to what our programmatic stakeholders tell us is important? It is, yes.
I think this is a big obstacle with me is I see a really good view of living in the community versus keeping SOTCs open.
Yes.
The government could save us so much more money if they would just shut down SOTC, build a lot of community living. We go to Washington, I have spoken with legislators about working with us about getting this option more available.
No.
Because there's not enough supportive living arrangement across the state.
Yeah.
But then we go to Washington, all they want to do is talk about the importance of keeping these institutions open.
Yep. To me, it's a heartbreaking scenario because I see the reality there, where if we re-diverted funds into another avenue, we could do a lot of good. Yep, I agree, and I see it. This is like I've never been in the position of needing to say this to a non-for-profit. I have said this to for-profits before, though. I have said the phrase, "I don't think your community needs you anymore," which is a really hard thing to say. Now, I think it's a good question to consistently ask. Does our community actually need us? Or do they need other organizations to thrive better? It's a hard question to ask. But man, if every nonprofit were in a position to ask that question and say, I think our community would be better served by them having more funding than us? It's a hard question to ask, but man, imagine if every board asked that question though. Like, what a beautiful place that would be. I'm happy to train those boards too.
Thank you.
No, it's a phenomenal comment. And I hope to be able to say that to nonprofits when necessary. But more importantly, nonprofit boards need to ask themselves that. Because sometimes nonprofits run their course, either because they accomplished their mission or because another organization that they helped support or connected with is using the resources in just a different way, a more effective way. Point being, it's good to ask the question, are we the right avenue for solving this problem? Hard question, but it's the right question for a board to ask. Which does kind of bring us to some governance pieces, right? If these are some of the core principles and some of the questions that we should be asking as a board, both during our board sessions, during our committee sessions, and even when you're on your own, you're thinking about your position on the board, thinking like, is this the right thing to do? Is this the right way to do it? What's the best path forward to support the social outcome that we are trying to champion? There are some governance pieces that go along with that, which means that a board has a job to do, right? We kind of all loosely know that, but you are here with a degree of authority and responsibility. As a board, you have three key roles, right? So often we think of nonprofit boards, you think of, yeah, they kind of do everything. They fill in everywhere. If something is broken, they jump in and they step in. That's not entirely true. What matters is that they're doing the things they are responsible for critically well. If they don't, things tend to fall apart, just like if the operations side of a business is not doing their job very well, you kind of can tell pretty if you're like, oh, they're not doing their job. Like if the salesperson's not doing their job, there's no money, right? If the janitorial team is not doing their job, you can tell pretty quickly, right? You pick up on that. It's the same for a board. If your board is not fulfilling these three roles critically well, you start to kind of take notice. So as a nonprofit board, you have three roles. You're responsible for setting direction, for ensuring necessary resources, and providing oversight. Those are your three core roles. Now, it's only a few words. We'll dive into what that actually practically looks like here as we go forward. But those are the three core roles of nonprofit boards. You set direction, you ensure that the nonprofit has the necessary resources, both financial and personnel, to do the work necessary, and you provide oversight for the organization overall. So what I want to do is kind of ask the question to the room. What are some of the ways your board sets direction, ensures necessary resources, or provides oversight? And as we do this, I'm going to start writing some stuff down. Can we see that online? If I'm
Yes.
right, we're good? All right, cool. So I posed the question, what are some of the ways that we, as a board, set direction, ensure necessary resources, or provide oversight?
I'll go.
Yeah.
I suppose, unless Rachel, did you want
You might be gonna say the same thing as me, Jason, so you go first.
So we can nail the wording, is that what you got?
So, what popped into my mind is in terms of setting direction is, we always reference our SILC mission and mission and vision statement. And we do, at least I feel, we make an active effort to stay connected and hear from our SIL and our disability community and use that to help build our, and we actually develop our SPIL, which sets specific objectives and goals and action steps. In terms of resources, I think we support Tara and Shelley in as well in terms of monitoring the budget and advocate and doing what we can to advocate and push for efficient funding and in terms of other resources for personnel. I think we are attentive to listening to concerns and issues and trying to find ways of addressing concerns or things that come up in whatever way that we can. to address those resources. And I think something that that come to mind, I think what we do well is, in addition to like the practical day-to-day operational stuff that we are aware of and the business that we work, we also, I think, are good in partnership with Shelley and Tara to do building up a culture within us to take care of ourselves with, with food and levity and conversation so that we can work effectively. I think that aspect of kind of create that connection and camaraderie and pleasant culture helps us do the business and also helps us have difficult conversations come up, do it in a way that is, it can be challenging, but also I think helps do that in a more productive way. And oversight, well, we have bylaws and we have annual review things in place that we follow, and I think hopefully after this will help us refresh our ideas on how we can boost that or update that so we can be more efficient.
Awesome. That is a very thorough answer. I like that.
Oh, good.
Was that everything you were thinking, Rachel?
It was more. Because I was just thinking, in terms of setting direction with the statewide plan for independent living, the spill.
Yeah.
So that was where my thoughts were going, and your thoughts went much further, Jason. Thank you.
Well said. Any other? Yeah.
What does Bill stand for, FPIL?
Statewide plan for
Planning for
independent
independent
living.
living. Yep.
Okay.
Great question. Yes. Relating to that positive culture piece, the buzzwords like that, something that I recommend to organizations, I know Eric and I have talked about this, is kind of having like a glossary or an index that can be passed out to anybody who joins the organization. That way you kind of know what to expect coming in. Those are some ways to embrace that positive culture mindset. So phenomenal question. Also, this is just a comment on board operations. The ability to ask a question on something that is kind of shared knowledge is a great sign. Those are like the best kinds of questions. Are you guys familiar with Simon Sinek? Do you know who that is?
No.
So Simon Sinek is probably one of my.
I love that review.
Simon Sinek is one of my favorite authors. He's one of my favorite leadership thinkers. He's a phenomenal optimist, and I wish more people shared his optimism for what the world could be. But he oftentimes will talk about some of the boardrooms that he's been invited into, and there was one meeting he was in. I love this story. There's one meeting he was in, and the executive was just kind of like going on about this report and was using a lot of buzzwords, a lot of information was being thrown at them. And Simon just kind of like looked around the room and he was like, he raised his hand, he went, I don't understand anything you just said. Which, wow. I mean, as a consultant, it's really tempting to just be like, yeah, I totally know exactly what everybody's thinking all the time. Oftentimes the role of not just a consultant, but everybody here in the room is to play the fool, to ask the question that you think you should know, but you don't. We don't want to make decisions on information that we think we know. We want to make decisions based on information that we do know. And so asking questions like that, it's a phenomenal thing to do. So if there's ever anything that you don't really understand or you would like some additional clarity on, asking a question is one of the best things that you can do to have a healthy team culture, have a healthy board culture. So any other things that we want to add to this to answer that question?
Oh, I wanted to add policies and procedures to bright bylaws.
Love it. I work in HR. I love when people say policies and procedures. Yeah, I read through your bylaws. Yeah. Having what you have in there is great. Expanding on that would not be the worst idea.
Oh, I didn't send you the policies and procedures, did I? Sorry.
That's okay. I read through your bylaws, so got a lot of good information from there. Cool. Anything else we want to add to this in terms of answering this core question? Okay, this is a great starting point for kind of framing up what we how we think as a board and the kinds of questions that we want to ask and answering those as best as we possibly can. So what I want to do now is talk about what I would call like the bicycle analogy. I can't remember, Mark Thorsby is the guy who kind of came up with this analogy for how a board and a organization work together. So on the front side of that analogy, we see governance. This is where the board sits, right? You have strategy. This is the what are we doing? Why are we doing it? When are we doing it? When do we not just have board meetings, but when do we need to get involved? When do we step in? When do we connect with these organizations? When do we advocate? These are things that we as a board need to sit and discuss. We're talking about governance and long-term strategy. On the back end, this would be your management. This would be the actual team. This would be Shelley, is the side where we're talking about tactics, which is how do we do it? How do we champion this strategy? How do we carry it forward? I guess not just Shelley, but the organization as a whole, whether that be volunteers or staff members. How do we do it? How much are we spending on this? How much time are we spending on this? Who is supposed to be doing this stuff? Who do we connect with today? Who do we serve today? That's the management side. That's the tactics side of running a nonprofit, which does beg the question of, we have operations in an organization over here. I should have brought a bike. And then on the front end, we have the nonprofit board who is steering. Where do we think the executive director falls on this picture?
On the C.
I love it. You were ready. Absolutely. To expand on that, the executive director has to do both. They bridge the gap between the people who are steering the bike, but also the people generating the power so that the bike can move forward, right? Governance determines direction, management determines capacity and capability. They add power to the idea and make it possible for us to move forward instead of just being like, oh man, wouldn't it be great if the world were different? Would be cool. Don't have anybody doing it. Now that's what the actual team is for. They're the ones who generate that power. You'll notice that the board is not the one who generates that power. They enable the team to generate that power. Now, that doesn't mean that a board can't be involved in the day-to-day. Typically, that would be done through like volunteerism as opposed to just being a full staff member. They can be involved, but ultimately their job as a nonprofit board member is to govern and enable the bike to generate the power, which puts the executive director in obviously a very challenging position because you're kind of juggling two full-time things. You're helping navigate that steering while managing the power. Because if you guys have ever like ridden a bike or seen someone ride a bike where they're going either way too fast or way too slow, man, do things get really, really messy, really, really fast, right? If you're riding your bike and you are going 25 miles an hour and you take a hard steer in a different direction, you're going to be having a really bad time for a while. But it's the same thing if you're going in a direction and you need to steer and you need to take a turn and you don't turn. Like if you were to just, in Rockford, we have the Rock River. And if you were to just stay on that bike path and ignore the fact that it curves, you are going straight into the river. The executive director helps determine how much do we turn this power and how do we redirect it based on the governance of the board, but also the capacity that we have to generate power at all. And also sometimes when we need to slow down so we can take that turn and do it really effectively. But does that make sense? The analogy makes sense. Like you as a board, as a nonprofit board, you're the governance side of this equation so that the power can be generated. Does that make sense?
I think it's great enough analogy.
Right. I love this
I
analogy.
like it.
Yeah. I'm feeling my excitement coming out. I had enough coffee. We're good. So to break down an overview of roles and responsibilities, taking that idea and putting it into kind of like, here's a list of some of the things that we hit. Roles and responsibilities move from policymaking down to implementation, right? This is presented by Greenhouse Social Ventures. So board responsibility sits in that upper Venn diagram predominantly, where you have mission definition, we're talking corporate governance, strategic collaboration, employment of the executive director, in your bylaws. I love when bylaws say the executive director serves at the pleasure of the board. I just love that phrasing. Capital budgeting, major legal and regulatory issues. Those are all board matters. Then we start moving down into that kind of shared space where it's a little bit of both. This is where we hit strategic planning, performance evaluation, fundraising, and friend raising. If you aren't familiar with the term, it's great to have funds. It's phenomenal to have friends who also have funds, and who have friends who have funds, and have friends who have capacity and time and expertise. Friend raising is also an incredibly valuable thing to have on a nonprofit board or an executive director, or just generally in your community. For example, for boards, I generally fall into the fundraising side. I can't write grants to save my life. You don't want me writing your grants. I know plenty of people who do know how to write grants. I would connect you with them as your friend, as a friend of your nonprofit board, or as a friend of Shelley, as a friend of people in the organization. Friend raising is a phenomenal thing that anybody in the organization can do. Same for fundraising, same for strategic planning, depending on their role within the organization. Then we start moving down into the staff responsibility piece of this. And at that point, we've moved from policy making and kind of structure development down into, okay, now that we know the structure, now that we have built the sandbox, let's go play in it. Let's go implement this stuff, right? This is where we're talking about employment of staff and volunteers, program operations. What are we like functionally doing to carry forward this mission and this vision? Financial and outcome reporting, tactical collaboration, operational budgeting, and administration. That's where we're into that implementation phase. That is not exclusively the job of the board. The board can provide guidance and structure to do that. But ultimately, it's the job of the day-to-day to handle the tactical, everyday administration of how things operate. It's also the job of the executive director or anybody on the team to say, I need more insight. I need more support. I need more guidance. I don't know what to do to navigate this individual thing. And really healthy board, executive director, organizational relationships ask those kinds of questions all the time. Hey, what do you need from us? What does your team need from us? What does your team need from the community? Do we have the right resources to support you and the organization at large? If you don't, let's figure out a plan together to get there. That's a really good relationship, because then you kind of get to go back and forth, up and down that path from implementation up to policy, down to implementation, up to policy, and so on and so forth. It's a spectrum that we move up and down instead of just, all right, we have a policy, now we're down to implementation. We develop policies based on what we need to implement. And we implement those policies once they've been developed. Any questions on this slide, on this content? Yes.
How often should you do strategic planning?
Ooh, all the time? If we're talking about putting it on paper, I would say twice a year. You develop your strategic plan, revisit it at least another time that year. But me personally, I like to spend time in every meeting talking about the strategic plan, because it's much better to adjust your plan earlier than be like, oh man, if only we talked about this 3 months ago. So I like to dedicate time in every meeting to reviewing the strategic plan, checking in on it, and seeing if we need to make adjustments or amendments. So every meeting when possible. Yeah.
Wouldn't we consider the objectives and the activities within our state plan for independent living, our strategic planning, and we visit that every quarter?
Yeah, I think that's how you are structured and governed. In general, board governance, sometimes they only do it once a year. I advise if you could do it every month, I would. But yeah, if you, your strategic plan, your spill is written out once and revisited. throughout the year, if I understand your bylaws correctly. So correct me on that if I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong.
Okay.
That's how we.
Yeah.
That's how we do it.
Perfect.
And it's just, we do a strategic plan every 3 years, and then we take it by year.
Yeah.
And we're assessing that at every quarter.
Yeah.
How far we've come on that.
Yep. I would then, while you have the formal spill that has been created, established, and submitted, I strongly encourage boards to almost treat that as a living document and see what do we need to amend and adjust, whether that be quarterly, monthly, discuss topics in committees, bring them up at the quarterly meeting. Because sometimes your strategy changes because, especially right now, things change a lot really quickly in the middle of the night. So it's kind of good to be ready to adjust if necessary. Yeah.
Well, sometimes the strategies change, and when we did the last spill.
Yeah.
We tried to write it broad.
Yeah.
In that we could move around within the objective and the, what we're gonna do for it. To amend our spill is not an easy task.
Yeah.
Because it has to go for the administration for community living. And unless it involves a small amount of finances, we have to take it back out for public comment. And wait another 60 days and another public comment period, and then resubmit it to ACL and wait for approval again. So
Yeah.
I don't know that we can internally amend what we're gonna do within that broad
Yes.
objective that we wrote and shift internally, but to shift formally as an amendment, the way we use
Treat
the word
amendments.
amendment.
Yeah.
Is not easy.
I'll swap a word, adjust.
Okay.
Adjust is the word that I would rely on.
Okay.
Often.
Yeah.
So, yeah, formal amendments, you very clearly, especially with Robert's Rules of Order, you have a process for that, not just within your meetings, but in general. I like the phrase, I use the phrase amend in other rooms. We'll use the word adjust, because then we're talking about, obviously you have your formal
Mhm.
strategic plan, your spill, but adjusting how we implement that can be discussed
Mhm.
regularly and consistently.
Yeah.
So it seems to me we could have our spill, but we could have a, what do you want to call it, a more informal, but a reflective strategic.
Applied
plan.
interpretation.
Yeah,
Yes.
that is ours.
Yep. Many organizations
Such
do that.
as,
They would
but
call
not
that.
limited to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of those some organizations call that an operational plan.
Yeah.
Where you have your strategic plan for you that is formally submitted, having an internal operations plan, which is how are we going to champion that forward, long term. That can be a really helpful guiding document.
Mm.
So yeah, I would consider taking that up during one of your meetings. Great question. Any other questions before I move along? Cool. All right, you're gonna see a lot of words in a very short period of time. I'm gonna break it all down slide by slide. So you have basic responsibilities as a board. They fall into those 3 categories of setting direction, ensuring necessary resources, and providing oversight. There's 10 that we have that I'm gonna rattle off here, and then I'll go one by one as we go through them, okay? So the first one is determining mission and purpose. That is obviously the clear function of the board. I think everybody understands that one. Just because I work in an organization doesn't mean that I get to set the vision. There's somebody responsible for that. That's you guys. Selecting the chief executive, supporting and evaluating the chief executive, ensuring effective planning and setting strategy. I'm about to trip on that cord. Monitoring and strengthening programs and services, ensuring adequate financial resources, protecting assets and providing proper financial oversight, building a competent board and assessing performance. We'll talk about that one as it applies to you in the way that your board is comprised and appointed. Ensuring legal and ethical integrity, enhancing the organization's public standing. Yes, yeah.
Is there any way we can make the print bigger?
I'm so sorry, I can't. That's as soon as I can get on it. Trying to think of, is there another option for providing
Not unless you wanna email it to me and I'll print it.
Please hold.
That's just in.
It's just in. Normally I wouldn't be on my phone during a presentation, but desperate times. I know.
Sorry about that.
No, you have nothing to apologize for.
The owl is recording you.
I know. I'm gonna turn it into Deanna. I'm gonna get in trouble. It's gonna be this whole. Oh, man. Should have it to you in just a moment.
This sparked a thought, is like,
Yeah.
and Adam, I appreciate you asking, because your question about print size on slides is an access issue, it's an access question.
Yeah, because I can
Yeah.
read the slides.
Yeah,
you know.
we're all about access,
Yeah.
so, and accessibility, so, and I think there's so that's something I can't think of the committee that I'm on or group, but, I think there is the understanding or the rule that we have, that I really appreciate from this other group is, very intentionally, we do not apologize for access.
Okay.
For access questions, there is no apologizing for asking access questions.
Amen.
Thank you.
So, and I think, we can talk a little bit more about it tomorrow or later, but I think that could be something that we adopt for our board,
Yeah.
is very intentionally, we don't apologize for access questions.
All right. Should have just emailed over. And if you don't get it, let me know. Fortunately, I'm gonna hit all those in bigger print on the upcoming slides, so we'll make sure that we do. So, but getting back into the flow while that hopefully sends and delivers. These are the 10 kind of core responsibilities that every board has in common, and they fall into those three broader categories of setting direction, ensuring necessary resources, and providing oversight. So I'm going to go through these one by one. So the first one is where we're determining our mission and our values. Now, you operate in a really interesting space where you're kind of told that you exist, right?
Yes.
That does not mean that you do not have control or some form of influence over the mission and the future mission of the organization. That is a beautiful benefit that you have as a nonprofit board, where you are told that you exist. You get to help determine how we actually impact the community that we're engaged in, right? And sometimes that means that we need to shift our mission language or shift the way that we go about engaging with our mission. And so you as a board, you determine the mission and the core values. So to hit a couple of these real quick, you as a board are expected to be laser focused on your mission in the work that you do. This is the what do we do? What are we doing? Who are we doing it for? What good for whom do we do this work? The purpose and the vision, which is the why, to what end? Like, what is the point of doing any of this, right? Mission tells you what you do. Vision tells you why you do it. What is the intended outcome? Like, as you dream about the world, what is it going to look like? We'll talk about that in a little bit too. In your work, you want to make sure that your mission work matches your purpose within your bylaws as well, right? Like, it's one thing to have it in the ideal, wonderful headspace, but really effective purpose-driven boards, they take that idea and they say, it's in our bylaws, which also means anytime that they amend it or adjust it or want to add some interpretation to that, you put that in the bylaws as well. Because sometimes your mission, you understand the concept and the idea. Sometimes you need to add a little bit more in terms of examples. We fulfill our mission in this way by doing this. And this is what that looks like to champion forward this mission. And we do this in stated uniformity. We get to say, what is your mission? And everybody generally should be able to say, it's this. This is our mission. This is why we're here. This is what we exist for. Which brings me to the wonderful question of, hey, SILC, what is your mission? Does anybody want to give me a crack at what your mission is, what your mission statement is? I'll let you guys write it down if you want and want to chime in.
I have it in front of me.
Peter.
To provide the resources. I don't know, that's
That's
as far as
fine.
I got. Provide the resources and guidance for independent living
Nice.
in Illinois. That's all I got.
Rocking it. A good way, another way to do this is, obviously we want to know the words, but what you can write down instead is, if I were to press you on it, what would you say is the mission of SILC? So take like 30 seconds, 15 seconds to kind of sit and consider that. If you want, you can write it down, but
To support independent living in Illinois.
Yeah.
That's it, really.
That's it.
at the core of it.
But what is support mean?
And there's where the details of the mission statement matter. So if to be helpful,
The technical assistance and education. Yeah, technical. So
Yeah.
That's providing trainings and things that maybe the staff of sales need and their consumers need.
Yeah.
To be able to help serve consumers more efficiently and for consumers to be able to advocate for their own needs to live within the community. That's a lot of words, but that's what technical assistance is.
I think that's pretty good. Does anybody have anything else they want to add to that? Aside from the thing that I put up on the screen?
Identify the gaps and needs and people with
Yeah.
disabilities so that way they can live independently.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, your mission as stated on your website is this. It's to provide leadership, research, planning, and education required to support independent living services in Illinois. Phenomenal mission.
Oh, you were reading that. I thought, he's got that memorized. Or something.
No, I don't have yours memorized yet. I'm working on it. I'll get it down. But this is the mission as stated by SILC, at least according to your website. So if that's inaccurate, hey, that's what your website says. This is what you do. This is not necessarily why you exist, but this is what you do to champion for a little bit different than it is right now. Which differs from your vision. So, and then, we talked about mission, the what. Let's put it into different terms. What would you say is the vision of SILC? What is the why behind what you do? You can put this in your own words. I'll throw it up here on the screen in a second, but put it in your own words.
I would say to reduce the barriers to living independently.
I like that. Anybody else?
Try to make Illinois a better state for supportive housing.
I like that.
Mhm.
Anybody else?
I would say to see all people with disabilities to live independently with the appropriate supports as needed.
I like that a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah, when we think of vision, we're really thinking of a world that does not currently exist. That's the whole point of vision or vision casting. Like people get brought in to do vision casting where they say, all right, what do you not like about the world as it is? We can focus on a lot. We're going to focus on one thing. What is one thing, what is a way that you would like to see the world be different? And what does that look like painted for me? So for example, we'll use Culturecraft, which is my consulting firm as an example. My vision is I see a world where everybody wakes up and they get to work somewhere that they love working. I think everyone deserves that right. It's a vision that anybody can get behind, right? We're like, oh yeah, I'd like, come with me. Vision is about inspiration. It's about saying, hey, look over here, look at this world. I like that world. Do you like that world? If you like that world, come help me build that world. That's what the vision of SILC is as well. So the vision, the aspirational state is, and I don't have this memorized, we see in Illinois where persons with disabilities are independent, in control of their lives, and free from barriers to full participation in society. I think you guys hit a lot of that just in the words that you were saying. But this is how you guys have it stated on your website and in your in your documentation. This is the world that SILC is working toward. And I would argue probably most, if not all, centers for independent living are moving in that direction. Which is a really beautiful thing. I love that you as an organization are connected to other organizations who are championing these ideas forward. Now, the reason that I'm leading with mission and vision as we're talking about what is the board responsible for is as we think about agendas, as we think about meetings and we think about structure, this is where we start. Every meeting that I oversee or any meeting that I guide, I say, okay, we're going to call to order. Would so-and-so read the mission and the vision of our organization? Let's make sure that we're making decisions through the right lens. This is the lens that we make decisions through. All decisions are made through the lens of our mission and our vision. That's how we operate as a purpose-driven, hyper-effective board. Does that make sense? Cool. So that is the vision. That is the aspirational state. Now to move on to items 2 and 3, when it comes to responsibilities of a board, you are responsible for selecting, evaluating, and supporting, that last word is critical, the chief executive, and maintaining that board executive partnership. That is the role of the board, is not to just say, hey, executive director, good luck. It is to say, hi, executive director, here's some resources. Hey, what do you need? Hey, let's take a look back over the past 3 months or 6 months and see how things went for you. What else do you need from us? Hey, here's some feedback. Here's what we think went really, really well. Here's where we think you could benefit, whether that be through training, through guidance, through additional resourcing, or sometimes just some course correction. Like ultimately, executive directors aren't allowed to just run wild and do whatever they want. They have a responsibility and they're responsible to the board, both for feedback and for blessing and support, right? And so when we think about that in action, it looks like this. We combine a strong board with a strong CEO or executive director, and together you work through your problems. That is what you do as a board. You combine those resources. Generally, the board hires, supervises, and supports and evaluates the staff executive. And then the board chair guides and leads the group of the board. Like, I can't come in here and just leave this room. That's not my job. Even if I were to join the board, if I'm not the board chair, it's not my job to come in here and be like, all right, I, as Tyler Smith, call this meeting to order. That's not my job. My job is to lead to follow along the leadership of the chairperson in the room and go along with them, but also to push back on ideas when necessary, to share in collaborative, generative idea making and discussion. It's that kind of that collaborative co-working space that we as a board get to step into. Like, this is a really blessed space that we all get to inhabit, because it's our job to not let either key leader just do whatever they want. It is the job of the key leader to open up for discussion and say, here is where I believe we are going based on the decisions that we have made. Any discussion on this? And do we need to adjust as we go forward? That is that collaborative space between whoever is the chairperson and the rest of the board, as well as the executive director. We want to we want to have open and honest communication. And something that we commonly see for effective boards versus ineffective boards and organizations is there's a beautiful word there. It's trust, right? We want to trust our executive director. We also want to make sure that our executive director trusts us. When we make decisions all the time, and as we make those decisions, we need to bear in mind how this is going to impact not just the community, but the people who are doing the work with that community. Make sure that we're providing the right support, the right resourcing necessary so that we are trustworthy members of this board. So that if Shelley or a future executive director in 30 years, what kind of relationship do they have with the board? Do they feel resourced? Do they feel supported in the work that they're doing? Do they trust the decisions of the board and that they are in the best interest of the community and them as an employee of the organization? And finally, we want to make sure that we have clear direction and timely evaluation of the staff executive and direction for organization, both the SPIL, the strategic plan, but also timely feedback to the executive director. I personally am a huge fan of quarterly reviews. I do not like annuals, and there's data for that. For those who are curious, I'm a data nerd, which is great because I'm a consultant. I should probably like data at least a little bit, right? One of my favorite data points is about feedback cycles and annual reviews. What we have learned is if you do annual reviews now, and this has changed a little bit in the past few decades, but now, I mean, if you only do annual reviews with your employees or your directors or whoever, what we tend to see is a decline in performance directly after that performance review. Woof. That is not good. You do not want the feedback. You don't like if this is your annual review. This is the big feedback. This is the hey, here's direction. Here's how last year went. Go get it. You do not want that conversation to then lead to all right, shoot. I'm gonna take my foot off the gas a little bit. That is not an effective review. That means that something is wrong with that system and structure. Because the point of a review is to lift up the person that you were talking to make it possible for them to be more effective in their work and in their role. Annual reviews on average, it's a 13% decline in performance. Oof, do not like that. As opposed to having semi-annual or quarterly reviews, you see an uptick, somewhere between 10 and 20% improvement in performance because they feel supported, because they're given course correction early, because they're able to ask for feedback and guidance early instead of like, how many of you can remember what you did a year ago? 7 months and 23 days ago. Can anybody remember? No? It was Christmas time-ish. Yikes. Right? Like that's so long ago. And thinking back that far and asking for feedback on something from that long ago, it's like I've been living my life for 7 months. I've made a lot of decisions since then. We could have had 2 quarterly reviews since then and gotten a lot more formal, effective feedback. So I strongly recommend that if you're not already doing quarterly reviews, to consider them, whether that be for Tara or for Shelley. And even as we consider our place on this board, how are we feeling in our role as a member of this board? Good feedback is effective. And that is something that the chair can provide. We want to make sure that we're
I've got a question.
Yes.
About quarterly reviews then.
Yeah.
Is that something that has to be formal or sort of?
Totally depends on the organization. So I'm going to use Ramp's model here for just a second. So Ramp has bi-weekly check-ins with their team. Those are shortened meetings. What were they, 15 minutes? Yeah, 15-minute check-ins that would lead up to a quarterly review that was focused on development that was then factored into the annual salary review. The quarterly review was very formal. It was written down, had a key structure, had an agenda. You were talking about the past 3 months, the next 3 months. It was built upon the information you gained from those check-ins. But the quarterly review was documented. I've worked with other organizations where they don't document the quarterly reviews. They schedule it as a 30 minutes to hour long dedicated check-in time, where you have some core questions, but the goal is really to assess how people are feeling and see how they're developing if they need some additional support. So it's up to the organization. Yeah, I prefer some form of formal feedback. And I think it's good to have it in writing, especially if you're seeing some developmental topics that you have to keep revisiting.
Yeah.
It's good to have that written
I
down.
think one of the problems or challenges with our situation, we're from all over the place.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're not physically here in Springfield all the time.
Yep.
And so, you know, that is a barrier in a way. So we've got to find a way to kind of overcome that.
Yep. I'm a huge fan of results only work environments for that reason, because the goal is like, it doesn't matter where you're doing the work, it's that the work is getting done. And so like, you don't need to necessarily be sitting in the same room, but having the conversation in some form of structure, or even having a committee that is dedicated to that kind of assessment can be a really useful way of working that forward. So, but yeah, I mean, if we want to hit creative solutions, yeah, I'm happy to help. I love that kind of work. So, moving on to that kind of fourth core role and responsibility It's to ensure effective planning and set the strategy. It's that, kind of coming back to the vision idea. It's the plan to get to that future state where we like, here's where we are. We can define where we are right now. We can say that right now, there are still barriers. We know that. If there weren't barriers, there'd be no reason for us to be here in this room right now, right? But we are here and we have passion for the work that we're doing. Otherwise, none of you would have submitted an application to be a part of the board, right? Our job as a board is to secure effective planning so that we know how to get from here to that future state. If you are doing tactical, practical, managerial work every single day as an executive director, or as Tara, or any other volunteer or staff member of the organization, you do not have the mental bandwidth to do strategic planning every single day of the week. It is not possible. It will not happen. So instead, let's make sure that we as a board who do have the bandwidth for it are able to do that and are making time to do that and to clearly communicate it to not just the rest of the board, but to the world at large, including our staff, employees, and volunteers. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Cool. That is a core responsibility of a really effective board. Fifth point here is to monitor and strengthen programs and services. So as an organization, we generally have different services that we provide. If you didn't, I'd be really curious to know what you do with all of your time. We can categorize these with this 4-quadrant matrix. And that goes from low impact, low mission impact, to high mission impact, and low financial impact to high financial impact. Those stars are the things that generate funds and absolutely nail accomplishing the mission of the work that we do. This would be, we've received funds in this grant for this thing that is at the core of why we exist. What I am doing right now aligns very perfectly with my core mission and my fundraising impact, not just for NICNI, but for the work that I do. I'm very blessed to be able to stand in this room, be compensated for my time while achieving the mission that I've set out to accomplish, to make the world a better place for everybody to work in. I'm very blessed in that. Trainings like this are my stars. I love getting to do this stuff. However, there are also some things that we need to do that generate a lot of financial impact, but maybe aren't necessarily, missionally driven. They're good. They're good because they make it possible to do the other things that are really important for the work that we do. This would be this is not what you do. I have to get paid to lay off companies sometimes. It's a really hard job. I hate that part of my job. But it is so much worse to limp along as an organization for 3 years with every one of your employees wondering if they're going to get paid. That's worse. Sometimes it's my job to sit in a room and say, you can't afford your team. You just can't. I'm really sorry, but you can't. I don't like that work, right? I hate that work. I do those jobs because it makes it possible for me to continue to exist so that I can have a positive mission impact in the world and champion this idea that I have. I don't love it, but it does pay the bills and it does keep the lights on. And as long as the lights are on, I get to do really good work. Yeah.
I don't know what to do about grant work because we're not allowed to provide direct services
Okay.
to consumers. The grant that we did get was given to one of our centers. And then we had administrative oversight, financial administrative
yeah.
oversight. And Tara takes care of finances for another conference. And sometimes I'm serving on different committees that pay me for my time, and that goes into our unrestricted funds. But I don't know how to tap into a grant situation.
I don't have the answer to that out the gate, but that does sound like something that should be definitively explored in terms of how to effectively do that. And like the reality is, this is the room to do that, but also shameless plug for Nickney. We do that. We do grant support. Not just as foundations and organizations, but how to navigate and get the verbiage where you want it so that you're able to use resources that are meant for you, but need to be worded in a very particular way so that you can get it without having to, lie. So, because we don't want to do that. Yeah, I wish I had like a clearer answer for that. But it does sound like if I were you as a board, this is a great example of an executive director asking and bringing up a core problem that the board should take up and address. This isn't necessarily the moment to dive into that, but that is a topic that should be discussed and addressed because the board are the ones who are meant to help solve that problem, right? It's a great question, great problem identification, I would say. I don't know if that probably wasn't like the hopeful spark you were looking for, but
No, if there was
if there's an easy answer, you guys probably would have thought of it.
I was gonna say, I would have already been there.
Yeah.
It's not,
Yeah, no, I mean, and the reality is consultants like me don't exist for the easy solutions. We exist for the very complex ones that we fortunately have happened to have had experience in.
Mhm.
Which again, I'm not a grant writer. I refer to grant writers because they know how to navigate that. But also half the time it's about knowing what grants are there.
Mhm.
And also knowing the right person who helps facilitate that grant and navigating that relationship and making sure that we're figuring out, okay, this doesn't go to services, but this does go to us who are providing support for those services. How do we help us use this money?
Okay.
So there might be some examination. Yeah.
Before I forget this, Shelley, I also want to suggest that perhaps you could talk to the heads of the other SILCs and ask how they are funded and alternative grants that they look into. They may have seen something that we don't know about.
yeah, that will be a question I can ask next Wednesday. Cause we have a group of us that kind of meet informally every Wednesday. I know that one had got a grant and it was like a pass-through grant. Where they, again, administered the funds and it went to some centers to buy vans for accessible transportation. And it's all in the
wording.
it is all in the having the understanding to write the grant.
Yep.
And the time that it takes to write that grant. It's worthwhile, but then who do we pay to help us write the grant?
Yep.
And then when we pay them, how much of the grant are we gonna be able to realize in profit?
Yeah.
After that has been paid.
I have a similar kind of example for a board I'm going to be joining in October. As we were meeting yesterday, and they were talking about how the grants that they apply for, they write the grants and then hand them over to the kind of parent organization who actually owns the space that they are operating out of. And they submit the grant and basically put their name on it and say, we will facilitate and administer this for this organization through this organization in this way as a kind of co-partnership. So sometimes it's that creative solution of how do we separate out administration versus direct service funding. What is the direct service funding being used for? Is it for services? Is it for assets? Is it for capital? Is it for training? Like, what is it for? But yeah, I think that was a great recommendation. So yeah, I would certainly, in general, I think that's probably a topic to bring up regularly at your board meetings. Is what are we doing to navigate very complex funding, given the kind of organization we are? Great statement, great question. I would love to just like sit and park there. I can't though. So if we want, I'm more than happy to talk about that offline as well. At any time that you want, Shelley. And then for anybody on the board, if you have questions, I'll make sure that you guys have my email, so you can ask me questions anytime. So, regarding this slide, our target 3 spots that we want to be in are, everybody wants to say all of our services are stars. No, they are not. They can't be. That is impossible. If you were telling me that, you were lying. Or you would benefit from doing a thorough examination of what kind of work that we do. Because we want to have our stars, but maybe 20% of our services or our product line or suite are just our stars. We have those things that we do because of the mission impact of it, the heart of it, right? That's why we have that. It's like, this makes a difference. We make no money on it, but we make a difference.
Mhm.
And we get to fulfill our mission by doing this kind of work. This would be like, for me, this is the volunteerism side of the work that I get to do. Yeah, I'll take a loss on that one. That's fine. I can just take this one for the love of it, for the love of the game, as it were. Those are your heart items. But every once in a while, I come into an organization and I say, "Oh, tell me about that service over there." And I usually get this expression, "Ugh," like, "Oh, hate that one." "Oh, okay. Why are you doing it? What's the why?" It's low mission impact. It's low financial impact. It's a drain on you as an organization. You're dedicating so much time and so many resources to this. And not only is your organization not benefiting from it, the community that you were trying to serve is not benefiting from it either. Why are you doing it? Can you stop doing that service? Sometimes you can't. Sometimes it's written into a grant. You just have to do it. You got to grin and bear it. But sometimes we are so focused on the fact that we are doing something that we aren't considering whether it's worth doing. Those are the ones that we want to take a moment, stop, and go, ooh, should we continue to? Those are the ones that we should consider revising or pulling out or cutting, are the ones that are low mission impact and low financial impact, because there's no real beneficial impact. As a board, it's our job to monitor and strengthen those programs and services and give the resources where necessary to try and get those big 3, the money tree, the star, and the heart. Those are the ones that we want to spend our time working on and move towards. Any questions there? Cool. Oh, yeah.
Want to break anytime soon?
Yes, in just a few minutes.
Okay.
Yep. We also want to make sure that we ensure adequate financial resources. It is not the job of the executive director or the staff members to generate all the funds. It just isn't. It is the job of the board to help administer and help generate funds. It's not exclusively their job, but it is a core aspect of the board and their governance. Yes.
I'm curious to know, in our current bylaws, does the board members are allowed to help generate funds? And if so, what are the current methods? If not, how can board members outside of the executive board can help raise funds within the organization? Or unless
Great set of questions.
Okay.
I think I can hit those rat tat tat. So, as I understand your bylaws, you are allowed to help generate funds. More importantly, you are
If
allowed
it's
to.
written into our spill,
Yes, as long as it exists in writing somewhere, you are allowed
in the
to.
spill,
Yes,
it has to be in the spill. According to the new ACL guidelines, it has to be written within our spill if we're going to do
Fundraising
resource
efforts.
development. We're
Yes.
supposed to use fundraising as. And then it has to be out of our unrestricted funds and not through any funding that we get
right.
from ACL or the state.
So it has to come from the right avenue. The point being, the board absolutely can have a hand in it, and directing resources to the right place and making sure that we're bringing sources into the right funds. It's also the job of the board to take a look at that budget and make sure that we're using our funds in the way that it is meant to be used. So we can do both. And so sometimes you'll interact with somebody who says, "Oh, I love the work that you do. Can I donate to the work?" Okay, maybe.
Where's that person?
Yeah, right.
I've yet to meet that person.
They do exist. I've met them. They're right now they're a little rare just because of the economy. But they do certainly exist. But even then, we need to make sure that we're directing them to the proper method of fund supporting, whether that be hey, we love that you're really passionate about this. There's this trust. Hey, we're really passionate about this. We need to make sure that's written in a way that's going to unrestricted funds so that we can use it.
That's where, at least to me, that gives a little,
Finicky.
yes, maybe more so for me, either the terminology of it or just the whole mechanics of how it's supposed to be done.
Yeah.
Gets confusing, even though there is something in writing that, the, board members can, help raise for resource development.
Well, also part of that for a board, the board is certainly authorized to identify grants that are beneficial. You're certainly authorized to support writing grants. Doesn't mean that you can be the one to sign everything, but identifying resources and identifying funding sources is something a board absolutely is capable of doing. Did you guys have any? You look like you had thoughts over there.
I'm just overwhelmed at the state of our finances right now anyway, so this is a heavy topic for me.
Fair enough. Overwhelmed in that.
And-
Overwhelmed in what way?
In that we need more funding to be able to continue to provide the level of assistance and support that we have been doing. And I can't seem to, and I'm hoping that this will break loose soon, but I can't seem to make it enough priority for our state to give us any more funding, although I know that they're exploring the option. It's just been a touchy subject, and it's a touchy subject for a lot of SILs across this nation.
Yeah.
And the reason that we are advocating for a direct line of funding from the federal government instead of having to be coming through the state, and that we have a direct source to support the SILCs.
Yeah,
We're an unfunded mandate.
right. Which is a really, really fun place to be. It's a really awful place to be, where you're told that you have to exist, but not given any certainty of funding. It's a brutal place. There are creative ways out of that. I wish I could stand here and just give you the answers. I don't know them. Because different SILs have access to different resources, whether they be through foundations or trusts or federal funding or state funding, even county funding. I don't know. But that is something to explore as a board. But part of that, when I say like the board is responsible for generating the funds, it's not necessarily just going out and finding a person with dollars, right? It's figuring out what are the solutions that are even available and open to us. As a mandate, what restrictions do we have and where we can get our money? JJ and I would strongly recommend doing an overview of that at your next board meeting, or even tomorrow if you can fit time on the agenda. I think it'd be really beneficial to see what restrictions you actually have and where you can get money. Because it's not super common, but some nonprofits or collectives of nonprofits basically state that you can't even accept donations. It's uncommon, but it does exist out there, where if anybody were to want to give $30, they can't. So
Can we accept donation?
Yes.
Yep. Private fundraising is one of the solutions to this kind of a problem. Figuring out how to make that possible is really tricky.
So, no, I'll say I'll elaborate more tomorrow on what we need to do it, but I believe if they still have like Giving Tuesdays, where after Cyber Monday, after Thanksgiving, people can give to whomever that next Tuesday. I wonder if we able to have like a drive where we encourage people to donate to us on that Giving Tuesday, but that's something we can discuss further.
Yeah.
So if we do it from our home and on our own computers. It's a sticky wicket.
Yeah, there's rules and restrictions. They just need to be clearly defined and discussed in.
But I think, yeah,
Yes,
but Tyler, I appreciate the suggestion. I think it would be worthwhile for us. If not tomorrow, if time doesn't permit tomorrow for maybe our November meeting.
Yeah.
To slot some time on the agenda for a more thorough discussion on, what is our restrictions in terms of our ability for resource development and.
Yeah.
What can we do?
Yep.
and I apologize for misuse of the term.
You're good.
Resource development.
Yeah. Yes, sorry, resource development. Yes. Since I'm being recorded, I'll say it right.
Yeah.
Resource development.
Shall we talk about,
Yeah.
how many grants do we get out of the SILC fund?
We don't,
Well, I meant that comes in
One,
the SILC,
we have one grant.
one.
Is the
So-
IAE grant separate from the Part B grant though?
Yeah, it's all just, do we have INE funds? I don't think so.
yeah, our
I
INE
was gonna
funds
say,
are
that's
the.
the 94 that we got last.
What we brought forward, yeah.
It wasn't separate though, it was all one contract.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
So you have one core grant. Yeah. Which means that there's,
So it's a vendor. It's,
nice. I think,
yeah, it was nice. And then we got INE funds and now it's getting a little more complicated, but
yeah,
doable.
understandable. All that to say, funds, budget management, resource development, nonprofit boards spend hours and days in committees talking about solutions to this very real, very consistent, very complex problem. I cannot give you the answer in the next 30 seconds. What I can say is you all are absolutely capable of figuring out the solution. Everyone here in this room has something that they can contribute to this discussion in some way, shape, or form. And if nothing else, you have time and capacity from a governance perspective to be able to do so. Making it a priority is what is critical here. So to quickly reference the slide, when we talk about budgets and budget analysis, oftentimes a nonprofit board might develop one ideal scenario based on the resources that they have at their disposal. We strongly encourage boards to develop three. You have your best case scenario, what you hope is possible if we get these three funds, if we get this much money from a fundraising endeavor, from a resource development endeavor, this is what we can do with that money. What's realistic? What do we think is probably going to happen? Okay, this impacts the decisions that we can make, what we can realistically afford, what we can authorize Shelley or anybody else in the team to do. And then, of course, is the worst case scenario. It is terrible to be surprised by a worst case scenario. It's really good to take some time to think through it and try and put pen to paper on, okay, if everything hits the fan, what do we do? How do we function whether we're in unfunded territory or a barely funded territory? How do we operate that way? Along with that, the core element here is to ensure adequate financial resources, not necessarily secure fund development in one specific arena. That means that you as a board are expected to figure out what are all of the possible ways that we can bring funds into our organization to accomplish the work that we do here. Number 10 on here is talking about advocating for funding your organization and the sector at large. That is an expectation of being a part of a board, is to advocate not just for you, but for your community, for the people that you were serving. So oftentimes that unintentionally just kind of falls to one member of the board or the executive director or the chair, but anybody in an organization is certainly authorized to advocate on behalf of the organization. I'm sure at least a few of you have done some of that advocacy work. Eric, when I was working with RAMP, you were doing a lot of that advocacy work. We had to reschedule our meeting because you had to go do an advocacy thing. That is the kind of work that we as a board are expected to do. That is an expectation, that is a fiduciary kind of expectation of a board. It's not legally mandated that you figure out how to do it. It is expected if you want your board to be effective and again, purpose driven. So I strongly consider taking some time, and I would even reference this slide in future financial discussions. There's 11 bits and pieces there. The last one we recommend to every organization, it's something that I make the case for any board that we serve on, is to figure out some way to also give. And not just as a friend, but financially, is there a way that we can contribute in some way, shape, or form? And it is not about amount. It is in no way is it about giving $10,000 everybody. Some of the boards that I served on, I was in a position where I could only give $5 a month. Great. I do that because it's me saying I care enough to part with missing out on a cup of coffee once a month. Absolutely. This is my contribution. It also makes it a lot easier when you do find yourself in that wonderful position of talking to somebody who might be willing to open the coin purse a little bit and donate or help secure some funding in some way, shape, or form to say, my pennies are in it too. I care. I care enough to give a little bit. That's something that we strongly encourage anybody who serves on a board to consider. You don't have to, but it's strongly advised. So take some time, consider it. I'm not going to put you on the spot right now and be like, all right, pony up. That would be really awkward if we would want me to do that. So, but the point being, it is our job as a board to ensure that the organization has adequate financial resources to do the work that they are expected to do. It's also our job to protect the assets and provide proper financial oversight. So not only are we making sure we have money coming in, we're making sure that when we have those dollars that we're using them the way that we're supposed to use them. This one is a legal responsibility. You have a fiduciary duty to do this. You are expected to operate with the organization's financial interests in mind. Part of that is making sure that there is a budget and that you review it, that you look at the receipts. Hey, this is what we did spend our money on. These are the assets that we have. Are they properly protected? This is one of the jobs of the board. So you understand your type of organization and what kinds of resources you have access to. And also you need to make sure that you're taking time to determine your strategy if things were to happen. Like earlier we talked about like the best case scenario, the worst case scenario. Job of the board is to carry that idea forward into what strategy can we actually put into place based on what happens or what has happened. Now, again, given the current everything, you probably have to have a lot of these conversations, a lot more frequently than we used to have as members of a board. You used to be able to have this conversation twice a year, maybe. Now, this is something that probably needs to be discussed in committee more frequently than it used to be, because things are constantly changing all the time. Because of that, we might need to adapt our strategy for how we communicate and talk about it. But we have a responsibility to do that, to make sure that we have a clear financial strategy moving forward. We need to build a competent board and assess the performance of that board. You are in a very unique position where you are appointed. You are told that you are here in some way, shape, or form. However, I did see a very wonderful thing as I was going through your website, which was an application to join the board. One of the ways that I would strongly encourage you consider about your board is, how are we talking to other people in the community that may want to be a part of this board? Are we talking about the work that we do? Because you have a means of applying to be a member of the board. You then have to be appointed. But there is a way to generate and show interest. Are we talking to people in our communities from different aspects and different avenues, from different organizations, from different agencies that align with our need for diversity and our need to have a certain number of seats from people who are working in state agencies? Are we doing our job to bring the right people onto this board? Or are we just kind of waiting and hoping that the people that get appointed in the future are the right people? It's a hard set of questions to ask, but our job as a board is to consider that. Yeah.
I think we need to work on that more, because I don't think there's not much communication out in the areas that we live in. I think that might be a project that we can try to work on. If possible, Shell. I mean,
I think board. Yeah, not just Shelley, but the board
Yeah.
at all, yeah. Yeah.
And-
Any your thought?
Would it be a good time for now to take a break? Just,
In 2 minutes.
Okay.
If that's okay. Can everybody give me 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
That'll work? All right, cool. But yes, building a competent board, key responsibility. Here are some markers of a great board, and then we can take a break. So markers of a great board. Here are some of the things that we see in great, really effective boards. We see a climate of trust and candor. And people stepping on tape and tripping on cords. We also see a willingness to share information. We don't see hyper effective boards aren't trying to cover their tracks. I find it so interesting how often we spend so much time covering our tracks and losing the path forward. We get so focused on what has happened and covering it up, or being like, well, it wasn't that bad, it was not a big mistake. What was I supposed to be working on? Right? Instead, we say, hey, here's what happened, good, bad, or otherwise. And we share that with the board because we can recover from mistakes. It's really hard to recover from information that we don't know and don't have access to. So we share that information internally, and when necessary and when possible, we share it publicly, the right kind of information with the society and the community at large. They also have a culture that invites multiple perspectives and is intentional about recruiting them, as we were talking about bringing in right people. There are right board members and there are wrong board members. We want to do everything in our power to make sure that we are a board that brings in those right people, and we're setting ourselves up to be inviting to those right kind of people, people that have diversity of opinion, that are from different backgrounds, from different walks of life, have different shared experiences, have different perspectives. We don't want to create an echo chamber here. We want to create a shared passion and a shared vision, but we don't want to necessarily all have the exact same experience. And so doing the work to find other people who not only share a passion for the vision, but would consider devoting time to this, that those are people that we want to be connecting with, especially as there are vacancies that open up over time or may currently exist. We're going to make sure that we're filling those with people who want to be here. And then finally, great boards they share a commitment to the assessment of the collective board and individual board members. They don't shy away from having the really hard conversations of, hey, you missed the last 3 meetings, right? I've been on boards where people just aren't there. Like there was one that I still couldn't believe this happened. It was a resource development night for an organization that we worked with, and it was their one annual fundraiser of the year. They had one. It was their only one. The one thing that they did. The board planned it. They scheduled it. They took care of everything. Half the board was not there.
Oh, wow.
And everybody in the room saw it. At no point in their history as a board have they sat down and assessed the quality of the board and assessed the investment and the commitment of the members of the board, which meant that they kind of just got to passively be on the board and do whatever. That is not an effective board. We should want to be assessed. We should want to make sure that the person sitting to our left and to our right is dedicated to the work that we're doing. And it's our job to assess ourselves, but also to ask for assessment and to give that assessment so that we are growing by being on this board and not just slowly becoming worse over time, right? You are dedicating time and resources here. It should help you grow as a person as well. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break and then we'll continue from there. So take a minute, stretch your legs. I know I can be a little long-winded, so sorry about that. Grab some refreshments and we'll be back in about 10 minutes. So I'll see you guys online shortly.
So let's say 3:10. So 12 minutes.
Yes. Set an alarm for 3:10 p.m. technically allow for that.
Yeah.
So,
Regularly talking about it in county, right?
Yeah, for special meetings, yeah, we can do that.
yeah. Or the, so there 14 days notice. I was just looking at another one. 14 days notice for you guys
I'm Riley.
for 3 days.
We understand.
Oh, 14 days notice for a special council meeting. Agenda has to be sent out 3 days in advance.
Well, I bet that's fine.
Got it. It's up there somewhere.
All right,
All right, let's go.
It is, let's come back to it.
Thanks, sir.
Give you guys a good break.
And
All right.
get back to it.
We're gonna finish up the roles and responsibilities piece. You're gonna see a break slide come up. We're gonna blow past that one. Let's jump right back into roles and responsibilities. So the ninth one that we talked about briefly on that slide was ensuring legal and ethical integrity. The board is expected to operate in an ethical manner. We'll dig into that in the legalities portion that we're kind of wrapping the day up with. But it is expected for a board to operate ethically, legally, and it's the job of the board to ensure that that is happening. It's not Tara's job to ensure that you're like, she's not the ultimate party responsible for making sure that you guys are operating legally. Obviously, please operate legally, but it's the job of the board to ensure that it is happening. You are the ones who are ultimately held responsible for that standard, so we should probably know how to do that. Going through your bylaws, if you've not received the bylaws or reviewed them, highly encourage reading through those. It'd be awkward if I was the one who was most familiar with your bylaws. We don't want that. You should be more familiar with your bylaws than I am. When we're looking at this, a board should implement policies and procedures that demonstrate its commitment to high ethical standards. So whether it be through some form of code of ethics, code of conduct, general board standards, some form of agreement on that. You usually find this in the bylaws or associated with the bylaws in some way, shape, or form. General code of conduct. You also want to make sure that you have effective policies for handling complaints or grievances, any procedural snafus. You want to have that documented. What can we do when something comes up so that we are operating in an ethical and legal manner? You already have it, but just to re-up, boards are expected to have conflict of interest policies in place. Noting that if there is a conflict of interest, there are expectations for how to go about that. We'll touch on that in Robert's rules a little bit as well. And then when we're talking about funding, we're talking about donations, we're talking about resources. Ethical sourcing of funding is critical. No pyramid schemes, no Bernie Madoffs, no fraud, no embezzlement. Anytime that we are looking for funding sources, we need to do that in an ethical, conflict-free manner. That is the ultimate responsibility, or ultimately the responsibility of the board to operate in an ethical, legal manner. I hope the answer is no, but any questions on how to operate ethically and legally? Any questions from Zoom?
No.
Awesome. You guys are welcome to ask questions, by the way. Perfect. What I have seen be really effective for boards in general is to once a year, twice a year, do a quick refresher on ethics. Having somebody come in and do that can be really effective. Or if somebody on your board is quite familiar with ethics and ethical process, taking some time during a meeting and going through either your current code of ethics or commonplace ethics and understood ethics for nonprofit governance. It's a really effective way to kind of refresh everybody and remind everybody, hey, this is how we operate ethically. Because we'll talk about conflict of interest today, but there's a lot of, ethics is such a broad system and structure. People have been debating it for literally thousands of years. And I cannot summarize that in 30 seconds either, but it's good to have a refresher. I've also seen some boards during every meeting will have a quick, 5-minute, hey, here's an ethics refresher on this topic, as kind of an educational moment. If you were to do that, you'd have to write that into your bylaws and structure and your agenda, but that's something that I have seen other boards do and does kind of help make those meetings educational, routinely educational, be beneficial. So, is everybody familiar with the Lone Ranger?
No,
Yes. Oh, that makes me so happy. I was like, oh, I need to find another, I know someday I'm gonna have to like swap this out for a different person. But when it comes to ethics and conflict of interest, when it comes to funding, when it comes to really any aspect of operating a nonprofit board, no lone rangers. You don't do anything of your own accord without the consideration of the board or the organization at large. Generally, we need to take actions with the consensus of the board. There are very, 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 very few exceptions for that. Basically, the exception being whistleblowing. If something goes terribly wrong and you discover that something is going wrong, yeah, you should bring it up to the board and the committee, or not the committee, to the organization at large. But you have a fiduciary duty, you have an ethical obligation to take the right steps necessary to stop illegal, unethical things from happening. That's like the one exception. Other than that, we take actions as a collective. We operate as a collective. And when we say things, we operate from this, where we communicate from this place of I'm communicating on behalf of a lot of people all at once, of this organization, of this community, not just what I think, but what we all collectively have agreed upon, that consensus mindset and mentality, right? No lone rangers, no. The place for independent thought is in the discussion room, is a good way to think about it, right? Here, we have a lot of conversation and we present our individual independent ideas. Once we leave this room, we are operating as a collected unit, as a collective. I don't get to say like, well, the board said this, but I think that we should do this. Nope. We as a board have decided this. We operate and we rule under consensus and agreement. Can be a little bit of an adjustment if you've never served on a board before, but it is how we stay unified. And it's also what reinforces this incredible necessity to communicate during your board meetings, to push on ideas. That's a really healthy thing to do. So no lone rangers. And finally, we want to enhance the organization's public standing. It's very frustrating when I am talking to somebody who serves on a board or works in an organization. I say, hey, so like, how's it going? I saw you in the news, or I saw this thing that you put on social media. I saw this event that's going on. How's it going? And they respond to me with, what a nightmare. I've heard that more times than I can count, and it breaks my heart every time because I don't work there. Like I'm not on your board. I don't have all the information that's going on behind the scenes. There's no reason to make me think worse of your organization if you were still committing time and resources and energy to being a part of making this organization better. That is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to generate positive, good public understanding of your organization. Do not lie. I'm in no way encouraging you to go out and be like, it's the greatest place it's ever been. We never make mistakes. We have all the money in the world. We don't need any resources in any way, shape, or form. That is not what I'm advocating saying. What I am saying is take every effort that you possibly can to generate goodwill and public understanding of what you do. What you do matters. What you do critically matters. SILs need support. They absolutely do. They need resourcing. They need advice and governance and understanding and leadership and training and equipment and everything. You are a wonderful resource for SILs, but you're a wonderful resource for a community of people who just need help. Sometimes help getting barriers taken out of their way, right? What you do matters. Be proud of that. You want everybody in the world to be proud of the work that you as SILC are doing, because it is a good thing. We also want to make sure that we're listening to the stakeholders that are involved in the work that we do. So we're generating public goodwill and a good public understanding of what we do. But you're also engaging with your community very often, as regularly as you possibly can, and saying, hey, this is what we're doing. Is this good? Is this supportive? Is this helpful? This is the mission that we've taken on. This is the mission as we understand it. This is the vision. This is the world that we envision. How are we impacting you? How's the work that we're doing benefiting the work that you do? Public surveys are a good way to get this information. Public interest nights are a great way as well. One of the side benefits of like resource development nights or resource development events is it's a time for people to be in the room and tell you what they think. It's a great avenue to get insight and information. We need to think about it that way if that's the intent though. Right? Like some nonprofits, they'll do the fundraising night. The goal is to raise this amount of money. Some nonprofits will have a fundraising night where the goal is to connect with their community and hopefully they don't lose money on the night. That's the goal. The goal is to connect with the community as best as they can. All that comes back to this core idea of, are we enhancing the public standing of our organization? And that is the final role and responsibility of everybody who is on the board. So, excuse me, before I continue on, does anybody have any questions on this or any of the other roles and responsibilities I hit? Yeah.
How can we be a good ambassador with the organization that you belong to if we don't do much activity, not enough,
Advocacy work?
Yeah.
Do you mind expanding on that question a little bit? I want to make sure I'm understanding.
because, we belong to an agency that do a lot of the activities and stuff, and sometimes they do a trivia night or something, but the clients don't do as much talking about
Yes.
self-advocacy and stuff,
Okay.
and trying to be a halfway decent self-advocate.
Self-advocating community. Yeah. I'm tracking with you. So to better understand your question, what is a good way that you as a board member or you as a board can advocate or better source information? Is that what the
Both.
question is?
Both.
Okay. Running through a list of ideas in my brain. Out the gate, my initial thought is I think we think of advocacy sometimes in the wrong way, where advocacy is sometimes thought of very loud, large, and public, or very loud, large, and with important, critical people that we know are critical and important and have influence. Sometimes advocacy is just making sure that people know. So some of the greatest advocates that I've known took people to coffee twice a week. And it started there because it led to a lot more conversations and said, hey, in our conversations, I think there's actually somebody that you should talk to. It's that friend raising thing that we're kind of coming back to. Advocacy sometimes is really slow, really, really slow. So that's one avenue. The other is when it comes to putting together events or organizational like community gathering points, partnering with somebody who already has something going on can shortcut a lot of that. So I'm trying to think of just one off the top of my head. So we'll pull from Rockford for a second. There is a networking, I'll use networking very loosely. There's a networking group called In Crowd. They meet once a month, last Thursday of the month. What they decided 12 years ago was every time that they meet, they're just gonna partner with a nonprofit and shout them out and give them a public place to talk about the work that they do for 10 minutes every single time. The nonprofit doesn't pay a dime. All they do is show up. That's the only thing that they need to do. So sometimes that means that you find organizations like that to partner with, or you coordinate with people and say, hey, we don't have the funds to be able to do this. Is this something that you would be willing to help us put together? Could we meet in your lobby? Could we meet in such and such place? It's that very, very broad creative thinking solution of like truly anything. I will throw everything at the wall, whatever sticks so that people know about us. We'll run with it until we can build upon it. So that's where I would start.
Is there any more things like Adam?
Well, I guess I could say is, no matter how much advocacy work we do, state officials and elected officials don't want to listen to what we think is best. They want to do what they want.
Yes. Unfortunately. It's just not like, there's no like nice thing to pull from that, other than unfortunately, money is really loud. It's a really loud communicator, and finding somebody who has money, who's willing to communicate with you, is a lifelong endeavor. But sometimes you get together a lot of people who have a small amount, and that does start to help. So, especially in the landscape that we're in right now, grassroots movements for some reason are catching fire, which is really cool to see. They aren't all winners, but some grassroots movements are starting to really move the needle, which is great. So I'd say, yeah, it's really hard to continue to advocate when it feels like they're not going to move, they're not going to budge in any way, shape, or form. The unfortunate reality of having a vision is your vision is going to outlast you. It 100% will. Every organization that has a phenomenal vision that's worth capturing and worth chasing after, most of the people who established that vision didn't get to see it happen. It's heartbreaking, but man, what a worthy thing to work for at the same time. It is a high calling and a humble ask to be here in this room for any nonprofit board.
Right.
High calling, humble ask. So, any other thoughts and questions before I move on to the next portion? Any from Zoom?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about some of the key expectations of your board. This is something that I would highly encourage asking as a question during either this retreat, either today, tomorrow, or otherwise during a committee meeting. Asking the question, what do we actually expect of the people who are on our board? And is it clearly, strictly defined? So like for some boards, like there is a board that I have been a part of where legitimately, if you miss one meeting, you are off of the board. Oh yeah, they're harsh. They're also incredibly effective. Now they're a little lenient on some of their other rules, but basically they have 4 meetings a year. If you miss one, that's it. Yeah, that's a big expectation to levy on your team. It's not an unreasonable one for the work that they're doing, because they don't really meet in committee very often. They really only engage 4 times a year. Yeah, I understand it. The reason that it works is because it's written out. It's written down. Everybody knows the expectation when they come in, they join the board, or they apply to join the board. It's part of the questioning process and the interview process is, can you make this commitment? This is a big commitment. Great. It's written out. We agree to it. Stock standard. Everybody abides by the same rule. These are questions to consistently ask yourselves, but also at some point have firmly written down and added into your bylaws if necessary. Your bylaws have some pretty straightforward rules on how to operate and govern. That's usually where you find your expectations of a board. I have seen some boards have a supplementary document where they say, this is my code of conduct. This is what we hold everybody on this board to as a standard. For bylaws are your operating principles. Your code of conduct is how we agree to function as an individual in contribution to that. I know, Dylan, that description is very similar. But bylaws, how we operate in this room. Code of conduct is my commitment and how I agree to present myself in the room and when involved in this organization. So strongly recommend revisiting and visiting and revisiting and visiting and holding everybody to that same standard. And it doesn't have to be the chairperson who holds people to that standard. Looking to your left and saying, hey, got a question for you. You may not know this, but this is how we expect everybody to operate, especially if you're new to the board, right? Like if you're new to the board, you don't know the rules yet. You just don't. You're not really expected to until you're here. Like I shouldn't know every single rule backwards and forwards if I'm not going to be engaged in the board. Like a random person on the street is not going to know them. But if you're going to be involved in this board, it's good to know the code of conduct and the expectations. So here's an example of some of what one board has as some of their expectations. I won't hit every single one, but these are some common ones. Support the mission of the organization, attend regular meetings, come prepared to board meetings instead of walking in and saying like, what are we talking about today? come in having read the agenda. Come in, come in understanding the bylaws, but if you have a question about the bylaws, coming in prepared to ask a question about the bylaws. Responding timely to other organizational requests, supporting the CEO or the executive director, embracing that chain of command, and upholding confidentiality. These are all expectations that a few boards that we work with have written into not just their bylaws, but to their code of conduct for anybody who's a member of the board. Continuously breaking the code of conduct is grounds for stepping off of the board. Because, hey, you may have all the passion in the world, but if you can't operate the way that we need you to operate, we would rather you be a volunteer instead of a volunteer leader.
Yeah.
Very different level of expectation. So I'm not saying these ones have to be yours. You have them and will continue to have them via the slide. But reviewing what you currently have in your bylaws and embracing a code of conduct sheet can be a really good avenue to making sure that everybody who joins this board in the future knows exactly what the expectations are. So, any questions on the expectations of a board? Anybody from Zoom?
No.
Well, I feel like I just need to like stare the owl down sometimes. Because it looks like an owl.
Charlie? Is there a way that we can try to get questionnaires out, or if they need a like if people might be interested in the board? At
Well,
least we-
whenever somebody is referred to us, we do have a questionnaire that we send out. I'm looking more at this conduct as something that we may want to put out there and send this code of conduct to all potential board members, but then I think that they should sign it whenever they become a board member.
That's a good idea.
I like it.
Strongly encourage that.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say, I'm on some boards that do that,
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and
same here.
it is helpful for accountability
Yes.
when one of these things gets.
Yeah,
bumped.
and see,
Yeah.
when I do the interview, I talk about what the expectations are. But we have people that just. And I think if they sign it and I say, when you committed to the board, you signed that.
Mhm.
This is what you were going to do, and you have not done this, and this. So I need to know if you are interested in continuing on the board, or whether at this time, we should recommend that you resign.
Mhm.
Because if you're
Yeah.
not willing to do that, then we can't keep having meetings when people aren't showing up.
Mhm.
I think if you have something in writing like that somebody's signed, you're on a much stronger
Yes.
platform.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we also do recruiting for companies. We've moved towards doing employment agreements for that reason, where like it holds the company accountable, but it holds the employee accountable. Like, here's the exact expectations. So you're coming in as an employee, you're signing this paperwork. I hold the board to an even higher standard. Like, yeah, if you're going to be on a board if I'm in any level of leadership with the board, you best believe you're signing some paperwork. Because you're determining whether an organization continues to exist, right? Like, no disrespect towards like a part-time office assistant, but you're working 20-something hours a week. You have influence. You absolutely have influence. You are not the one signing checks and ensuring fiduciary responsibility. A board is. So yeah, I highly recommend code of conduct and having your team sign it. It also helps self-filter people who may submit an application. Like, some people have a pretty good understanding of like, well, I can't do it. I can't. I know I won't be able to do this one thing or the other. And they may come back with the question of, is there something else that I can do to be involved? Which is a great question to have them ask. But it usually starts by having the standards clearly written out in some way, shape, or form, and authorized and supported by the board at large, right? So yeah, strongly encourage and recommend that.
I have one.
Yeah.
This is Tara. We have one sentence in the bylaws that says the chair of the board will discuss the ability of a board member to continue to serve if he or she misses 2 meetings in a calendar year. We don't do that.
But we can.
But we can.
And I would expand on that with a code of conduct as well.
Mhm.
So one that's co-developed by the board, signed off by everybody, and implemented. So would be a good avenue to do that.
Would that be underneath the outreach committee, or would that be under
Operation.
operation?
It's outreach.
I think my initial thought is outreach would work closely with Shelley and Tara to craft it. And then operations can look at it to incorporate into bylaws or other operational manuals. But we can talk about that.
Yeah.
We might talk about it tomorrow.
But and this is, things like this are a great avenue to utilize your committees really effectively, right? Because committees have a little bit more leeway on how they meet and when and what they discuss. There's still an agenda that's expected to be developed, but you can, most ideas are baked in committees instead of just like presented in this one room with a degree of regularity. As we go through Robert's rules, we'll talk about what it means to commit something to a committee. There's a formal process for saying, hey, that idea is really great. I think we need to bake that in committee for a little bit longer. So things like this, most items can be referred to committee and then brought back. So that we're not having to spend 8 hours in every board meeting talking about everything under the sun. We get to talk about final components and pieces of it. So any other questions or anything from the chat? Awesome. Hey, look, it's break time. Just kidding. We will take another break in about 20 minutes. So what I want to move to now is the different kinds of governance and specifically like agendas, how to operate boards. So largely, organizations and nonprofits have been operating under what we would call 20th century governance. It worked really, really well in the 20th century. We are 26 years into the 21st century. We've learned a lot of things, but also critically, the social landscape has changed pretty dramatically. What is important has shifted and continues to shift over time. Because of that, it's important to kind of learn and adapt to the changes and the needs. And so even as we talk about 20th century governance, 21st century governance, I have put together kind of a hybridized version of it that we'll discuss as it relates to Robert's Rules of Order and how to run a meeting that will still be incredibly effective, abide by Robert's rules, but work in some of these things that we would benefit from as we go. And I have that agenda in there for you to refer to, but it does follow Robert's rules, I promise. So 20th century governance looks like this. This will probably look incredibly familiar in some way, shape, or form, right? This is standard flow agenda, and we've been using this since 1878 when Robert's Rules was initially written. I think it's 78. Been around for a long time. This agenda has worked for a long time. We can expand upon it, but this is generally the flow. You show up. There you call to order, you approve the minutes, you have a president's report, the finance report, the executives of agencies or departments report, any committees or special advisory groups provide their reports as well. You hit any new business, you hit old business, whether it's unfinished or not. If it's just old, it's old, you bring it up and you talk about it, even though it's done, it's old, you bring it back up. And then once you talked about the old things for long enough, you say, all right, that's enough time, we're adjourning.
No, public comment.
Yeah.
Okay, public comment.
Yeah, yes. This is very common standard flow agenda process. I would argue it has been effective at times in the past. However, it leaves a couple of things out that we now know are critically important. For example, where is purpose in here? It's not clearly identified or present. It might show up in president's report, executive report, chair report. It might show up in special committees, might show up in advisory groups. But it's pretty siloed, right? Like purpose is not the purpose of the board or the organization. It's purpose of this portion.
And hopefully that harkens back to the purpose of the organization. We can't even guarantee that. Purpose is kind of unfortunately left out of this process. Now, purpose used to naturally flow really well in nonprofits, in actually not even just nonprofits, just in board discussion and documentation. Things have just changed. They just have. And the way we think about purpose and vision and mission have continued to grow and expand. Even the field of management is less than 200 years old. Like the scientific field of how to manage really, really well, it's less than 250 years old. We're still learning so much about it. Like we learn so much about science and anatomy and biology and technology every single year. We're learning the same thing about management and operations. Year over year, we're saying, oh my gosh, that's why that didn't work. One of my favorite things about economics, I was an economics major when I was in college before I swapped to management because my advisor said, hey, if you want to lead companies, you should probably learn how to manage a company. I went, oh yeah, you're probably right. That's good advice. I like that. One of my favorite things is that in macroeconomics, we still don't know why the Great Depression happened.
Mm.
We don't know. We still don't know. We don't have an answer. We've been working on an answer since 1929.
Wow.
Been trying to figure it out. We don't know, but we're continuing to learn and build and adapt and develop our understanding of what led to a really awful time for a lot of people. It's the same thing for board governance. As we're learning more and more and more about why boards fail and why boards succeed, I would argue it's time to kind of shift into a 21st century understanding of it. Now, this is what this agenda looks like. You still abide by Robert's Rules of Order. So I'm going to cover what a purpose-driven board can move towards, and then we'll come back, we'll talk about Robert's Rules and how to adapt that into, adapt this 21st century idea into your current structure. That sound good to everybody? Awesome. So 21st century governance looks more like this. You still start up at the top with the call to order, and you read the mission of the organization. Out the gate, before you do anything, you say, all right, welcome to this meeting. As a reminder, this is why we're here. This is what we stand for. This is the point. This is what we do. This is what we're here to accomplish. Bearing that in mind, here is what we are going to be discussing today in the consent on the agenda. This is also a time where you can review any minutes from prior meetings, talk about them, and make sure that they have been formally approved. From there, you move straight into strategy, strategic action plan progress, whether that be for spill or internal operational assessment. You can call it whatever you want, but basically, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? How, in what way, shape, or form? From there, you move into strategic discussion. So that first one is like, here's the actions that we need to make a decision on. Here's the plan. Here's the progress towards that plan. Here's decision-making. Your strategic discussion is where you're having generative thinking. You're asking challenging questions like, why would we collaborate with that organization? I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but why would we? What's the benefit? What's the benefit to our community? It's where you ask things like, why can't we get funding? That's the point in the meeting where you have that discussion. It's big, it's important. You ask it, you talk about it, you bring it to motion. You say, we need to talk about this. It's on the agenda. We're going to hit it. As you continue to have that discussion, eventually you say, okay, we're going to refer this to committee. We're going to move this into an action plan. We're going to put action items on this. You're going to handle this. You're going to handle this. We need more information. We'll discuss this in the next meeting. You move to unfinished business. This is, instead of saying old business, yes.
This is just a question I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
Have we ever considered the board member paying maybe a due every year to?
I think there's limitations on what you guys specifically are allowed to do because you're an unfunded mandated organization.
Okay.
So
We can't, we can't.
you can't
require that of
mandate.
you.
Yeah,
We can
can't
ask
mandate
you
it.
to do as you can.
Yeah.
But that's it.
And I advise and request anybody who's on a board to give something.
Okay.
Doesn't need to be a lot, but something.
Right.
But you can't list it as a requirement in a nonprofit board. For-profits get finicky. They, yeah. But that's what I would say for that. Yeah.
So what I've seen, one key difference between the 21st century board agenda and the 20th century board agenda, I noticed that the latter is more participatory.
Yes.
I noticed, for instance, there's more time for people to discuss what's going on in our world right now, along with the unfinished business and new business. And there's also a chance to have input from the executive committee.
Yeah.
Whereas from before, people may assume that the only people who get to speak are either executives alone or the board alone, and that's it.
It also, you're hitting it exactly on it. The other thing that is a key difference is in 20th century agendas, it was the responsibility of different committees, different persons to handle different aspects of what was going on in the world. And if they missed it, too bad. This facilitates a time for, this is open discussion from ideas that we believe are critically important and would like to either talk on now or talk on in the future, and just at least schedule a time to talk about it. And it becomes the collective's responsibility, not any one person's sole responsibility. It's moved away from that Lone Ranger mentality into the collective mentality. That sounds like a gavel. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of generative discussion. However, it needs to be well reined in, which is where Robert's rules actually are really helpful in having good discussion around this. So, but yeah, we move from that discussion piece into unfinished business, not old business. If it's old business, it's done. It's done. We're we're done. Don't bring it up. Unfinished business, however, is there are some things that we had tabled for a future discussion or action items that we were awaiting information on. Now is the time for your committee update, your advisory group update, even your executive report update. It usually falls into the unfinished business in some way, shape, or form. New business would be things that we either know we need to discuss or were planned to be discussed per the agenda. So this would be it's time to put together our spill. This is dedicated time to bring that up. Or this is something that has been referred to us from a committee. This is new business that we are expecting. And you have your executive session. And to be clear, I'm going to differentiate what we might think of as an executive session from executive session. This is not the part of the meeting where the executive stands up and says a lot of things. Executive session is a closed session meeting that basically the executive either gets to express frustration, complaint, grievance, or ask for coaching, development, insight. This is a time of the meeting when an executive director or a member of the staff gets to say, board, help, please, I need help. And this is something that you don't necessarily want recorded in public minutes because it can be really vulnerable and personal, and often it's about interpersonal things as opposed to the budget, right? It's also a time for feedback in the other direction. The board saying, hey, this is, we had levied this expectation. We've talked about this in a couple of different iterations now. We like to talk about an actual development plan and change here. We need to talk about that. It's a formal time to do that. It doesn't mean that you have to say anything during that time, but having it on the books and saying at the end of every meeting before we adjourn, we make sure that there is time for mutual back and forth feedback in the executive session. Great opportunity to make sure that we're hitting every single topic, whether it be about the budget, about operations, about funding sources and grant management, about services and collaborative endeavors with the community, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
I will say that's a brand new concept because we are taught through our trainings from the independent living technical assistance and training. Sessions should be extremely rare and only for discussions of personnel or maybe a lawsuit or something. And that's it.
Yeah. Having it on the books doesn't mean you need to dive into it. but making sure that it's scheduled and that you've made time in the agenda if necessary is where I would argue it's beneficial. So it doesn't need, discussions should be rare. Like to have a personnel feedback, you do not want to have that every single session, because that means that something's going wrong elsewhere. But making the time for it on the agenda, that's the part that I'm talking about here. It's about scheduling it instead of hoping to add it in later and creating a motion for an executive session. That's the distinction I'm trying to narrow down into. Does that clarify that?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Basically, it's a lot easier to have discussions that are touchy if you're already making time to have the touchy conversation, as opposed to trying to say, hey, we need to have a touchy conversation. Like this is going to be tough. It's a lot easier if the expectation is there.
Right.
It's a lot easier to step in that moment.
And and everyone knowing that it's kind of planned and it's there, doesn't necessarily mean we have to use it, but
Correct.
the understanding is like, it's just there for when we need it.
It is there when we need it. It's like a slush fund. It's like
Yeah,
versus
versus-
emergency fund.
Yeah, versus saying we need to have this and kind of trying to make it fitting a special meeting into it.
Yeah.
Which then everyone knows is like, oh, something came up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always better to cut your meeting earlier by saying, you know what, we don't actually need to use this executive session time. Any matters to bring up? No. Motion to move on, adjourn. So, and then finally, just as with the other one, you still adjourn. You don't stay in you don't stay in a board meeting forever. That'd be a really weird existence. Oh, reasons. But then yes, as with 20th century agenda, you still adjourn. You still formally adjourn. The reason we do this is because when we adjourn, we say that we are done. We are done talking about board matters. The conversation has now ended. Unless you were talking about action items that you need support with, the conversation is done. You had your time to share your thoughts, or you tabled your thoughts and discussion for a later date. No parking lot conversations. Like no, all right, we had our board meeting. Hey, before you get in your car, I had these thoughts. And I didn't really feel like saying them in the room because of personality stuff, but I'm really frustrated. And I think everything that we're doing is a terrible idea. And I really hate that we're doing this. Let's talk about how to change everything and like work behind people's backs. That's what a parking lot conversation is. We don't do that if we want to be a good board. We also, if somebody initiates a conversation like that, we go, I think we should talk about this in the next board meeting. That's how you stop that conversation from happening. Because once you've adjourned, the conversation is done. Boards are pretty formal in that way. This is the room where we talk about these things. Committees are where we expand on these ideas and then bring them back to the board. The parking lot is where we say, where am I going to dinner? That's what that space is for. Or I hope you have a really great weekend. Or yeah, I'm excited to go hang out with you up at UIC, right? Like the work is crazy. That's what the parking lot is for. It's not for continuing board matters. Does that make sense? Cool.
Yeah, in fact, you could be violating the Open Meetings Act by doing that.
You 100% are in violation of the Open Meetings Act. Yeah, especially if you touch on money.
Yeah.
In any way, shape, or form. Good night. Like that's a really fast way to break open meetings. Zoom, any thoughts?
Yeah, what if we don't finish all of business?
You think-
Sometimes it's not enough time.
Yep.
How can we get better with it?
Great question. Let's talk about Robert's Rules of Order because it touches on that and what to do with that when that happens. So, those of you in the room, who is familiar with Robert's Rules of Order? Awesome. Okay. Those of you on Zoom, are you all familiar with it too?
Yes.
Okay.
Raised their hand.
Has anybody read the entirety of Robert's Rules of Order?
No.
Do you know how long that book is?
Quite long.
This is no. This is shorter. This is Wealth of Nations. This is the foundational economics textbook that Adam Smith wrote in the 1700s. This is 500 and let's see the actual book, not the glossary.
598.
Almost.
5,
That'd be book.
608.
Oh,
This is 608 pages.
wow.
Robert's Rules of Order, the finalized version, published in 1915, is 815 pages long, last I checked.
850, oh my God.
The condensed version,
I think I have
A
the
big
condensed
bag or so.
version,
the condensed version is 244 pages long.
yeah.
It's still very, very long. And that's the third edition. That's the updated edition. Yeah.
Saul wants to say a word.
Yes.
First, let me say, I've had the privilege of serving on a great many boards. And when I was still practicing law, I represented many of them. This is really an outstanding presentation. I really do mean that.
Thank you.
Here is the but.
Like it?
The many of the things that you have indicated and suggestions work very well, in my experience, with your traditional not-for-profit board. While SILC is a not-for-profit board, it's that unique animal authorized by statute, appointed by the governor, really one specific task. We're not trying to cure anything. We're not trying to improve a downtown. We're not trying to find housing for the unhoused. And in that sense, it's kind of unique. Additionally, we are made up of people from all corners of the state of Illinois. So coming together for your traditional board meeting, where maybe once a month you all get together in the evening and you all live in that town, and you may see each other when you're out to lunch during, that month, doesn't really apply. We have bylaws, which, while they could use some tweaking, are far from terrible, in my opinion. To me, the issue for us that I would appreciate if you're able to address is first of all, what do we do to really comply with our bylaws? Do we have functioning committees? What are the standards for our seeking new board members? What skill sets are we looking for? What demographics are we looking for? They are a little different. What geographical mix are we looking for? And I think that those are important issues. And in a board which is not also raising money for a cause, and I'm going back now to your comment about everybody donating. I'm on boards like that where everybody is expected to donate, and frankly, it's good that they do. I presume the state of Illinois Treasury could accept a donation from us if we gave it. Would it get to the right place? Would it come for this purpose? I don't know. I don't know that happens in any other places. So, how do you tailor this truly good message to a very unique animal?
It's a great question. I don't want to cut you off, but I can't see your screen. Was there
I'm
more
done.
of a... Okay, cool. Okay, we hit a lot of different things in a very short period of time there. I'm going to come to the last question, because I think that's a really, really good question. How do you tailor this to a very unique beast? Here is my general philosophy with every single board that I've worked with, and this has been proven true to me 100% of the time. Every board is a unique beast. Every board requires this information to be adapted in some way, shape, or form, because these are guidelines. The point of this is to give you good ideas and good insights into a direction for what you could adopt. And what we know is like kind of like the ideal. Very few boards take 100% of this and apply 100% of this perfectly for a long list of reasons. Now, least of which is sometimes they're mandated where they have to do something differently, right? If I understand your bylaws correctly, Robert's rules is stated in your bylaws. You are expected to operate under Robert's rules of order. Awesome. I think that totally makes sense. Many boards don't have that in their bylaws, but that doesn't mean that we can't learn and adapt and add some ideas into time that we have in the agenda, in the meeting, in the structure, things like that. So I would love to actually connect with you offline about all the other topics as well, or a follow-up for everybody in the room if they would want. I don't want to sound like exclusive. About how to hit all the other individual pieces there, because a lot of those are topics that should be discussed in great depth, either in committee or in board meetings. And I'm going to come back to that idea of, I do think it makes sense for a period of time to call for some special council meetings. I think there are a lot of potential items that you would benefit from having some long-standing discussion about. Both things that can be adapted from what we're talking about today, but also ideas that we just don't have. Like, I know there's probably ideas in the room that are important to you that we just don't have time to talk about today, and might not even talk about tomorrow. There's a lot that your board can do. There's a lot that your board would like to do. So yeah, I would start there. Because here's what I can also say this with 100% certainty. 100% of my clients have said some form of the phrase, "Oh man, good luck with us. We're different." Yeah, of course you are. You're not the other organization. You're absolutely right. You have unique problems and unique challenges that you need to solve. I don't know how to solve those yet. You don't know how to solve those yet. But that yet is a really important word to me. And so I think you're right. I think that not all of this can be 100% perfectly applied. You're spot on. Picking the right things to cut and picking the right things to bring in, I think is what you as a board are designed for. I think that's your ultimate function and purpose. Because I can come in here and say all sorts of things. But if you can't use them, it doesn't matter. So I don't know if that answers your question in the way that I have the time to answer it. But if you have more of a thought, please. Yeah.
It is a very good answer, because I take it to be saying it's for this board to come together, take the materials we've gotten today in either our board meetings or in our committee meetings to talk it through and see how we can apply this to have a governance model that is active, that with which we're comfortable, and which helps us to fulfill the ultimate vision of a good plan for independent living for the people in this state with disabilities.
Nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. Yeah. Well said.
Thanks, Al.
Yeah, thank you. That's really good. If it's cool, I'm gonna transition kind of back into the Robert Rules flow. But before we do that, I actually think that's a really good quick break point to take a few minutes, reset. If we can do a 5-minute break this time, I think that would be great. So that we can hit the core aspects of Robert's Rules, hit legal duties, and then adjourn. Sound good?
Yes.
Cool. Scene 5.
Anyway, the captioner is not back.
Check, check. Dear captioner, hello?
There we go.
Yeah!
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, cool. Let's jump back in. Before we move to Robert's rules, I want to touch really quickly on this generative ideas portion that I had mentioned earlier, that kind of like open discussion, strategic discussion piece. This is what generative topics kind of looks like. These would be items that you would bring up during that portion of the meeting, that strategic discussion. This is when boards were having conversations like, what opportunities did we realize as a result of COVID? That's like no singular person owns that. Somebody needs to bring that up in some way, shape, or form. It's a really valuable discussion that isn't just reserved for the staff. That's a board discussion, right? Like, what continues to threaten the organization? That kind of like SWOT analysis mentality. You, as a board, you can do a SWOT of your organization in and of itself. You don't always need to hire that out. But asking those questions, what threats are coming up? What threats do I know about? Or let's take time to discuss what are some threats that we maybe haven't considered. Who makes up our ecosystem, and how will our decisions impact the whole? Like, hey, we have this great idea where this is what we put into the spill. Real quick, time out. How exactly is that going to impact everything? Have we considered the ramifications and the spillover effect, pun intended, for the decisions that we are making? And then, like, finally, is our board populated in a way that ensures our power is authorized by and inclusive of the community impacted by the work? Oh, thank you. This is a generative discussion. We call it generative because it's introducing a new idea, and the goal is to generate more insight, more information, more idea, more action from it. It's not to necessarily end a thought, it's to introduce a thought, give it valid, full bore discussion and time, and then use that information to influence the decisions that we make. So that's what I mean when I'm saying generative discussions, and why I think they're really important, because those are ideas that we wouldn't necessarily have on an agenda unless somebody happened to think of it before you came into the meeting, right? That's why I think there's some value to potentially introducing that to the idea. So that's what I mean by generative discussion. Here's a question that I think you guys would benefit from just sitting with for a period of time, maybe between today and tomorrow. Take 15 minutes by yourself and think, what are some generative conversations that we might want to have? Doesn't mean that we need to put generative discussions straight into the agenda, but it's good to think about them and potentially introduce and say, hey, I do think we would benefit from some conversation about this idea. Yeah.
Maybe we should have a conversation on how we can educate employers about the importance of considering a person with a disability
Absolutely.
versus a person who has a disability.
And how to communicate around that, and not just be like, no, you should because they're people, but hey, you should because of all of these reasons as well. Like, unfortunately, sometimes the ethical person emotional argument is not enough. Sometimes you need to be able to say, hey, it's good for you as a business too. Right. Yeah. There's perks and benefits. So yeah, I love that. I think that figuring out how to do that is a great question that falls under generative conversations and generative discussion. It's not necessarily a pre-agenda item, but it can be an agenda item if you make time to have those conversations. So now let's do a crash course in Robert's Rules of Order.
Oh, goody.
I want to be really clear. Again, the third edition, the revised third edition is 244 pages long.
Mhm.
I recommend at some point giving it a skim. What I strongly advise and kind of remind boards is most boards, 95, 97, 98% of boards need the crash course. They need the primer, they need the basics, they need the core established rules. You don't need the parliamentary procedure of a subcommittee on the Security Council of the Senate, right? Like, they have parliamentary structure and rules. They are expected to know how to abide by all in the subsection of the subsection of the subsection of
That's the
Robert's
reason they
rules.
have a parliamentarian.
There you go. For you, you really need to know the core basics, right? These are the 6 essential elements of Robert's Rules of Order. You know the essential elements, you know pretty much everything you need to know about how to go about proper structure in meeting for a nonprofit board. Now, brief history on Robert's Rules of Order, just to kind of quick recap it in case we want that refresher. The point of Robert's Rules of Order is to create structure in a place that does not naturally have it. Meetings fall into disarray and chaos unless you have a structure holding them in place. Robert's Rules is kind of the gold standard now of how to run a meeting with some form of designation of structure of how we move from one thing to the next. That's the point of Robert's Rules. It's clearly defined start and end of ideas, of topics, of conversation, and it's what keeps ideas moving from I had a great thought to the thought is now an action and it has been implemented. That's the point of Robert's Rules. It also creates structure to allow everybody to have time to express their ideas and their thoughts if they wish to express them. That is the point of Robert's Rules of Order. And we hit that with these 6 essentials. How you have motions, you have amendments, you have commitments, questions, adjournment, and points. Those are your 6 core essentials of Robert's Rules of Order. That covers 90% of how you operate in this structure. So we're going to go through them. Stop me if you have questions. I will spend and parking lot them for as long as is necessary, but I also want to be mindful of your time. So we'll start with making a motion. Who here has made a motion or is familiar with the idea of making a motion? You know, make a motion to, right. Board members must discuss one issue at a time to keep order in the boardroom. That's the point. When you've made a motion, what you're saying is we are talking about this now, and we're only talking about this now. Nothing else is part of this conversation unless it directly interacts and intersects with this idea. We're talking about this right now. The board chair should only allow one person to speak at a time. We take turns, right? That's the whole decorum piece of it. Any member who wants to make a motion must request the floor and be granted the floor. Simply saying, I make a motion, and this is what I'm going to start talking about, that is unacceptable. You say, Mr. Chairperson, I think is now the more common phrase, chairperson. I make a motion to whatever the thought and idea is. The chairperson then determines if you are allowed to continue talking. And they basically confirm whether the motion hits the floor. So we're basically taking an idea from out here and saying, all right, it is now here. And now all of us get some time to talk about it and discuss it. Here's the thought, here's the idea. Because I made the motion, I go first. Once I'm done and once my time is expired, if we go by time, then it moves to another person. Yes.
Okay. Point of order.
Yeah. Yes. I love that, which is a request for clarification. Yeah.
2 questions.
Yeah.
First of all, should we make a motion to approve that day's agenda and then allow if something needs to be added, add something to that current agenda through motion and second? Can we do that?
You absolutely can do that. That is going to come back to what kind of agenda you're going to use moving forward. Which is part of this hybridized version that I'm talking about.
Okay.
So, because some items will just fall into that realm of discussion of this is now, like I move to our strategic discussion portion of the meeting.
Okay.
Does anybody have a motion to make as the chairperson to bring an idea to the floor?
Okay. The second question is, I've seen this done both ways. Somebody will make a motion to approve like the minutes.
Yes, which yes, you should make a motion to approve.
And then we'll make a second and then discussion. Okay, because that's how they've been doing it every Springfield City Council meeting since I have been watching forever. And I'm thinking, why would you have a discussion after you make a second motion to
technically the minutes are set and confirmed, you would amend them.
Well, no, they do this on every motion. They make their first, they make their second, and they go discussion. I'm thinking,
Once there's a second, the discussion's done.
that was my thought, and I thought, am I crazy? This is a city council.
You,
They should be getting this right.
so to initiate a discussion, you would technically need a seconding. But also to finalize the idea, you need a seconding to move out of discussion.
So
but
Shelley,
then you
what
can-
you're seeing though, that discussion,
Yeah.
right? So I'm bringing whatever to the floor.
Yes,
There's a second to bring it to the floor and then there's discussion. Is that what you're seeing in those meetings and not seeing, I want to vote and I'm bringing it to a vote? Because
Right.
then discussion's over.
Okay, yes, they do bring it to the floor and then they discuss.
okay. Yeah,
And
we're
then,
talking
okay,
about
I see what you're
confirming
saying.
minutes. Yeah,
Yeah.
confirming minutes is basically a vote.
Yeah.
You would move to, well, you would question, you wouldn't move, but.
But you would ask, is there any additions or something that we
Correction.
need to change?
Yes, the motion for approving the minutes is bringing it to the floor. The confirmation of the minutes is the conversation is done. We have approved the minutes. That's the question. That's the, yeah, you can discuss minutes, especially if things are missing from the minutes.
Oh,
That's the time that you do that, is during the motion.
okay.
Does that make sense? Okay, I want to make sure I hit that clearly. Thank you for that clarification.
Mhm.
Yeah, but the final piece of saying that I have approved the minutes, that does not lead to more conversation.
Mhm.
It should not lead to more conversation. Once you have approved them, they are done. So if they're doing that, then there's probably a process misunderstanding. But moving the minutes to the floor for conversation, that's normal.
Right.
So.
And then after we have conversation and discussion or corrections or amendments, then we say, can I motion to approve or vote to vote to approve the minutes?
Yep.
Confirm the minutes, second, and then after the vote, the conversation's done.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what I thought.
And the only way to bring it back would be to refer to
Old
pull
business.
it back up. Yeah, to initiate new business. You can also use that. Well, amendments are just for the floor. Yeah, you can, there's a way to bring them back if correction is necessary, but you would then again make a motion to correct. So. Yeah, that's making a motion. That's the bulk of it. There are 5 categories of motions.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I know.
Get straight.
I know. So these are what motions can be used for. There's technically a 6th. We'll touch on it briefly. A main motion introduces items to the membership for their consideration. That's the standard, that's the bulk of your motions are, there is this idea. Here we are going to discuss the idea now. That is your main motion. They cannot be made when another motion is on the floor. You can't have a motion and be like, I move to add this to the floor. No. We have to end the prior discussion first, and we can end that in a few ways, but we have to end that one first, only one thing at a time. A subsidiary motion changes or affects how to handle a main motion. This would include amending a motion, like I move to discuss this in this specific detail. Okay, this is what we are discussing. This is why we are discussing it. Here's the information. Oh, actually, can I amend that motion? Can we change the means of discussion around it? Can we, I left some information out on accident. We need to talk about the funding for this service, not just the reality of the service existing. We need to talk about operations and funding. I only initiated operations. I'm very sorry about that. I would like to amend the motion. That's making a change to the conversation itself. Privileged motion is used to bring up urgent matters that are not currently on the agenda or related to pending matters. Basically, you get information in the meeting and you need to talk about it right now. That is predominantly what a privileged motion is used for. You would still have to end the prior conversation and say, I would like to move to add this to the conversation today, even though it's not on the agenda. We need to talk about it. It's important. It's significant. Such as I found out 30 minutes ago, the building that we rent from, their lease, they're not renewing our lease. Like, that's new information. We need to talk about it today. It is urgent. We have 3 weeks to decide something. That kind of, like, that's a privileged motion.
Incidental motions provide a means of questioning procedure concerning other motions and must be considered before the other motion. And then a motion to table basically means, hey, we need to stop talking about this right now. We're gonna revisit this at another time. This does not send it to committee. This sends it to the table where we can pull from later. Typically, if you're tabling an idea, you're killing a motion. You're saying we're going to be done with this discussion right now. I move to table this for our next special council meeting. I move to table this for the November session. That is what that motion looks like. But it's worth bearing in mind that even if it's used to kill an idea or a piece of discussion, you can always pull from something that has been tabled. There is a sixth motion that candidly, if you're having to use it, there are other things wrong on your board. It is to permanently remove an item from discussion indefinitely, in perpetuity. It is, motion to, I think it's
Never
strike.
talk about this again.
Literally, and you can't.
Yeah.
That those motions, if you feel the need to make that motion, there are other things wrong on your board. That makes sense in a parliament or in a political sphere. That's not what this room is for, though, right? Here, we're open to having open conversations, long-lasting conversations. So those are the 5 that you really should be using. So those are kinds of motions. Motion steps, this is the process. When you make a motion, you make a motion. A member rises, raises their hand, or uses an agreed upon method to signal the chairperson. Knocking is a common one, and saying, chairperson, and referring to the chairperson, making your motion. Then another member seconds the motion. If it is not seconded, it does not hit the floor. You do not discuss it. As much as you want to, you don't get to. So sorry. Bring it up next time. Once it is seconded, the chairperson restates the motion for a few reasons, not least of which is to make sure we're all talking about the same thing, right? Make sure that everybody heard it, everybody's ready for that conversation. Then you debate and discuss. Members debate, you discuss the motion, taking turns as you do. Robert's rules says when you initiate the motion, you go first, and you are not allowed to talk again until everybody that wants to has had a chance to share their thoughts. Then it can come back to you as the initiator of the motion. And then the chairperson gets to continue to direct conversation as necessary, keeping an eye on how long are we talking about this, right? There might be some small, minute things that you don't hit in your motion conversation. That's okay. You want to hit 95% of the bulk of the conversation. The other 5% are things that you can refer back to in future conversations if necessary. You want to hit as much of it as you can, but you don't want to stop conversation or stop action because you're like, well, I had a thought, but I forgot it, right? Once the conversation's done, you're done. Once the chairperson feels confident that we have discussed it enough, they call for a vote. They'll call for the vote. All members must vote, abstain, or have recused themselves from the matter. Affirmative and negative votes are recorded along with abstentions, or if somebody has recused themselves from the conversation, you would recuse yourself in situations of like conflict of interest, right? Then once the vote has happened, you announce the vote. The chairperson announces the results to the board, and any associated instructions are communicated and documented in the minutes. And that's generally the process for making a motion. Yeah.
How is it how rare it is for let's say board members of nonprofits to call a gag order, and if that happens, how would I call to do so if, let's say, someone keeps bringing up a motion that's either out of turn or it's unethical and inappropriate to the meeting or the environment?
Yeah, so for that, it's a point. The points go to the chairperson. It's usually a point of order, point of procedure, a point of, what's the other one? I hit that in an upcoming slide. But you make a point,
Okay.
and refer to the chairperson, who then reins that meeting right back in. So, gag orders are, everybody in the room is expected to abide by confidentiality. As far as like killing a thought, you would still refer back to the chairperson.
Okay.
Yeah. Great question. Now to amend a motion, board members use this process to change the motion and can do so by stating, I move to amend the motion that is on the floor. Amendments can only be done for motions that are currently on the floor. This is another one of those examples where you can't interrupt another person that is talking. When they are done talking, you can signal to the chairperson and say, I would like to move to amend. And they determine whether you are able to continue forward with that. So like, oh, you move to amend, second. Okay. How would you like to amend this motion? And then the process continues. No vote is necessary. The chairperson just signals whether yes or no. So, and that's an amendment to a motion. Commit. I wish more boards used committing, because committing, I think, is where a lot of ideas actually belong, not necessarily in the boardroom in that moment. So to commit, we do this because sometimes it becomes clear that a motion would be better honed and discussed in the relevant committee. Sometimes ideas hit the board and they have not been fleshed out enough. There is clearly information that is lacking. You note this when somebody says, I don't know, or I don't have that information, or, oh, I hadn't thought about that. When you start hearing those kinds of phrases, it's a really good move to say, I would like to commit this to the operations committee. Or one of the other committees, the finance committee, or a special advisory committee, if you have the ability to establish those and say, we would like to establish a committee to discuss this. You commit the idea to that. Once a motion is moved to committee, it is discussed during the next committee meeting, and the committee presents on the motion at the next board meeting. So that has to be discussed at the next committee meeting and then the next board meeting. That is the cycle in Robert's Rules of Order. Basically says this is important enough that it's moving to top of the agenda, or really early on in the agenda. We have to discuss it because we can't just permanently park it on the table of a committee. And the committee would provide guidance on it at the next committee meeting. Does that make sense? Or the next board meeting? Cool. I think a lot of ideas belong in committee. A lot of them. I think the best thing a board can do is to use their committees more frequently, even if it's a meeting over Zoom for 30 minutes. Calling for that meeting, documenting it, great, please do that. You still meet. Make some time to talk about things that you need to flesh out the idea before you carry it into the next board meeting. Question. Putting a question is the phrase used to end discussion and call for a vote. So I put the question to the room, vote to affirm, confirm, vote to such and such on the motion that is on the floor. Typically, this is only called for by the chairperson and initiates the voting procedure. In very rare circumstances, you can have somebody else call for that question. It is usually stated verbatim in the bylaws and makes things more complicated. I do not advise it. You want one person running the meeting, that is your chairperson, and they are the one who should be calling the question and votes. On that, any questions on that portion? Awesome. And then finally, adjourning. The chairperson calls for the end of the meeting and all discussion comes to an end. Adjournment is the final matter of a board meeting. Done. And that's that process, right? So now I want to talk about points, as we were talking about earlier. So points. Certain situations need attention during the meeting, but they don't require a motion, a seconding, a debate, or voting. It's permissible to state a point during a meeting where the chairperson needs to handle a situation right away. So, we're talking about, hey, somebody is saying something untoward, or we're leading into unethical conversation, or we have not only did we table this, we killed this, and this has been discussed we voted on this one already 3 meetings ago, and they keep bringing it up. We're done. It's not the point of. There's different points that you can make to immediately cut through the moment. It still needs to be referred to the chairperson though. So you would make a point of order to the chair. So types of points. You have points of order where a member draws attention to a breach of rules, improper procedure, failure to abide by the established protocols, so on and so forth. Like, hey, this would be point of order. I understand that you're really passionate about this idea. Not everybody's had a turn to speak yet. Point of order, the chairperson would go, you're right. Does anybody else want to weigh in on this topic before we go back around? That would be a point of order because it's a breaking of procedure. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. Point of information would be when a member would like more information on a topic or a motion, they can request a point of information to do so. This is usually just asking for clarification on origin or clarification on information that was presented regarding the motion. This isn't saying point of order or point of information, discuss this more. You just discuss things as you go around the room and discuss the motion. Point of information would be, hey, I know that we're talking about this idea and this topic. I don't have here in my notes what community foundation this relates to. I know we're talking about this service and this industry. I don't know. I don't have that information in front of me. I need that information because of what it relates to. It's asking for additional context. A point of inquiry is when a member would like clarification about a report. So like if a special committee provides a report, that is where you make a point of inquiry about that report and the context of that report. And then point of personal privilege. Sometimes it gets warm in a room. A point of personal privilege is about the space that you are in. It's used to address the physical comfort of a room, such as the temperature, the noise level, such as trains, the smell, and so forth, right? That's where you make a point of.
They use that a lot at the legislative level.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen that used a lot.
Yes, yes, they do. It's a great way to interrupt a conversation, unfortunately.
So, for example, to the chairperson, I'd like to make a point of personal privilege of the gaseous smell in the room.
Chairperson, there's been a point of privilege regarding the gaseous smell in a room. I believe we would need a break to address that. Is there a solution that you would have? And you'd have that conversation with the chairperson. But ultimately, they're the ones who get to determine the flow of the meeting.
Gotcha.
So, yeah,
Okay.
they would note it, but doesn't mean that something necessarily needs to happen. So it's, if nothing else, it's noted for the record as well. So, yeah, great question. All right, any questions on types of points? Those are your primaries. I mean, that hits pretty much everything you need to know about the basics of Robert's Rules of Order. Which leads me to this core of agenda. Yes.
One other thing before, when we get to votes.
Yes.
Are there other options other than aye,
Or nay?
nay, or abstention? Or just those three?
Just those three.
Okay.
Everybody in the room is expected to either vote or abstain. And your vote, there's only two ways to vote. It's either yes or no, aye or nay. Or whatever terminology you deem to use. Aye or nay is the most common. Do you have a thought?
No.
Oh, thought you had it.
I do.
Oh, yeah.
Unless we have non-voting ex officio members. So they-
Oh, right, yeah,
Right.
yes.
Just.
Yeah, so they're, yeah,
Point of
to that point, yeah, they would never vote.
Wonderful.
But they're not abstaining. Yes,
Stephanie,
yes.
or-
Yeah, so if you were ex officio, yeah, you don't get a vote, but your vote is also not recorded as a vote, yes, no, or abstain.
But they get to discuss.
Yes,
Do they get to make a motion? No.
yeah, as far as I understand, they're
They
allowed to
can
make a motion.
make a motion, but they can't vote on it?
I believe so. Unless that,
Interesting. I haven't-
Ex officio members?
I would need to, I'll double check that. I thought per your bylaws they could.
Point of clarification.
Oh, no,
Point of clarification.
yes. Oh, point of clarification, point of information. Yeah, point of inquiry. Yes.
Tyler, when it comes to votes, do you have recommendations? So I've been on a lot of boards that
Yeah.
do it different. Some boards will just do a voice vote. Some boards will do everyone just goes around and everyone speaks.
Yeah.
Do you have recommendations on when it might make sense to do a voice vote versus when it actually may make sense to
Roll
have
call.
everyone on record to do a roll call?
Roll call.
In general, I think everyone should be on roll call for 100% of votes. There's no reason to not document. As far as times to do a vocal vote versus a written vote, I defer to the chairperson in general. I lean towards if the conversation was short and clear, a very straightforward, I call aye or nay, is a great way to keep the meeting moving along. items or motions where there has been a lot of conversation, I recommend writing it. Or maybe not necessarily writing, but having some form of signal or symbol for, this is my vote, for personal comfort. Because you also don't need to say who voted yes or no. But we don't want to peer pressure people into having a vote that they don't necessarily agree with. Or force them to out loud say, I abstain. Those words can be really tricky for someone to say.
I don't know how we would do that in this type of meeting.
Yeah, I don't know what the best solution would be. If you give me like 10 minutes that I can't take right now, I would 100% help you figure out what a good solution that would be. Because I think there are some creative solutions. I've seen people use red and green stamps, like the color dot, like the paint stamps. Mark it on a piece of paper and pass it along. Private text works as well, as long as the information is noted for the record. That gets a little finicky. So yeah, there's some solutions, but if that's an avenue you want to go down, more than happy to help you.
Okay.
Play test that.
But generally a roll call
Yeah.
more than a like, all in favor say aye and the whole room speaks, because then someone isn't necessarily on record.
Right. Yep. For me, if there's a vote, everybody needs to be on record.
If I may go back to a slightly prior question,
Yeah.
on the issue of ex officios,
Yes.
I've never heard of ex officio board members having a right to a vote. That's part
They don't
of
have a
what
right.
makes them ex officio. They are not a full, complete board member. They're more like an official advisor or observer of the board. I mean, that's my experience.
Are you talking about motions or voting? Because I agree, they definitely
Voting. Both making a motion and voting. If they think a motion should be made, they should ask another board member to make the motion that they have.
I say that because there are some boards that I've served with where their ex officio members were allowed to make motions. So it technically is up to the discretion, and I don't love that structure anyway. I just don't recall off the top of my head from your bylaws what your statement is on ex officio. The more I'm thinking about it, though, I'm pretty sure they are not allowed to make a
Yeah,
motion.
no, they're not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. 3.7. Is that the subsection?
Is that what I'm in?
Might be.
Board members now.
Anyway, yes, thank you for that clarification. So no, you don't get to, I'm sorry, but you don't get to make motions. Yeah. John can, I think.
Yeah.
Just, hey. Thank you, Saul. I appreciate that. Perfect. So any questions on those pieces before I move on to the kind of hybridized agenda that I have here?
I've got
Yes.
a question. I'm on another board and we had a training last year and the trainer insisted that when it came to the financial report, we'd always made a motion to approve the financial
Yeah.
report. She said we shouldn't do that because we are not auditors
Oh,
and that we should just file the report for audit.
I disagree.
It's like,
Yeah, I've heard that before.
I have heard that. I vehemently disagree with that. If reason being, part of being a board is an expectation to gain fiduciary understanding if you don't have it yet. You don't need to be an accountant or a CPA,
right.
but you're going to
But
be
at
looking at financial statements. You should
Yeah,
understand them.
that proves that we looked at it
Right,
by making a motion. Yeah.
Right.
We fulfilled our duties, so to speak.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
I thought
understand why
we did
someone would
too.
do that. I don't like it.
Yeah.
And that is not standard rules of order.
Okay.
So yeah. I mean, good question. I understand why they would do that. Like, I understand the thought there, not necessarily for Robert's rules.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions on this piece? Perfect. So here is this kind of hybridized version of agenda that I've put together. My 21st century piece is noted in red and clarified generally towards the end. This is sort of a meshed together version of it. So this is how, like, I would run a meeting if I were establishing a board and making the rules. I would start with the call to order, and then I would add in a reading of the mission, because that is not currently a part of Robert's rules. I would approve the minutes and then also accept consent agenda items. So anything on the agenda or anything that has been added to the agenda since it was initially sent out if necessary, accept those, acknowledge those as the chairperson. I would, you currently kind of go in order of your chair, executive, director, and committee reports. As I look back through your minutes, that was the general flow. And once the financial report was done, then you move to your agency and your advisory group reports. I think that flow works well. I understand why it functions that way. Also critically, it's Robert's rules. That's the general process, is you kind of start from high degree of responsibility and authority and move your way down. That continues to work. I generally like that. But once you've hit those advisory group reports, then we start talking about unfinished business. These would be your tabled items, your works in progress, things that are action items that need to be revisited and discussed, which kind of allows you to move then again into the strategic discussion portion, this generative ideas piece. We're talking about challenging questions, generative thinking, but we've established a point in the meeting to have that. We're having discussion about this. You can either do that before or after we hit on new business, where it's time to bring up new things that that have been added to the agenda already, that have been planned, that are scheduled. We are discussing them. Once those new business items have been discussed and addressed, move to that time slot for an executive session. And once that time slot has happened or the executive session has occurred, we adjourn. This is how I like to hybridize the two of them, where you still have your flow of Robert's Rules of Order, which brings a lot of really good structure and guarantees that things are discussed and talked about, but brings in some of those 21st century ideas of how do we work some more vision and purpose and natural discussion into a meeting that doesn't have to be led from a chairperson or the director of the head of a committee. It allows for ideas to be introduced and discussed. So I present this to you as an opportunity, something to discuss, something to expand upon. It is not, I'm not going to say it is the gold standard. It is a standard that I think works really, really well and could work well. But that is up to you as a board to discuss. In general, and not in general, in finality, whatever you have on your agenda, that's how you should run your meeting. If you wish to amend that agenda, I would strongly encourage making a motion to change the agenda and discussing that and implementing a new agenda if you think that would be necessary and beneficial to the organization. But whatever you have on your agenda, follow that agenda, follow it well, abide by the rules of a process and procedure. I'm glad that all of us are at least familiar with Robert's rules. I hope that served as a decent refresher. This is the process. This is what we abide by. After this, I have 2 cheat sheets I'm sending over your way. One has an example of how a meeting runs with motion. Another one has a cheat sheet of a bunch of different phrases that you can say to initiate different things in proceedings. Here's what I advise. Print that out or have it available on your computer and use it in every single meeting. Even if you are confident that you know Robert's Rules of Order, back, left, up, down, center, right. Like, even if you know Robert's rules, it's still really helpful to have it up, especially because some of the things that might need to be discussed or brought up in a certain way can be pretty uncommon. And knowing the proper procedure and way to bring it up is a really helpful way for everybody to stay on the same page. So strongly advise using that cheat sheet. It's from another board governance organization. I really liked it. And so I cheated and took it because it's a really good, really good tool that I use with other teams. So that's the theoretical proposed agenda. We're going to hit the final piece here is legal duties of what you are expected to do and what not just expected, legally obligated and required by law to do as a board. There's 3 duties that we need to cover to make sure we're all on the same page. First is duty of care, then there's duty of loyalty and duty of obedience. I'm gonna move over to this side of the room because I've been sitting in that spot for so long. So we're gonna go through them fairly swiftly. I want you guys to know I will hang around for a while afterwards if you have any additional questions about anything that I've talked about today. But I'm not gonna hold you past your time by more than maybe 60 seconds. So does that work for everybody? Beautiful. Okay, let's start with duty of care. This is the level of competence that is expected of a board member and is commonly expressed as the duty of care that an ordinarily prudent person would exercise in that same position or circumstance. It doesn't mean you need to be perfect. It means you need to display the level of care you'd expect a person to make. Somebody who has empathy and some form of consideration of other people on the planet. A board member owes a duty to exercise reasonable care when making a decision as a steward of the organization. Duty of care means things like reading your board packet, asking questions, using your best judgment, and making independent decisions that are in the best interest of the organization and its mission. On that last one, a great example would be you have a duty of care if somebody from the news asks you to say something that you don't agree with or does not represent your organization. You have a duty of care to say, no, that does not represent what our organization stands for. That's a duty of care, right? It shows that you are displaying the level of care that somebody else that isn't on the board would likely do in that moment of consideration. Duty of loyalty is a standard of faithfulness. A board member must give undivided allegiance when making decisions affecting the organization and its mission. Basically saying, I can't split my allegiance between this organization and this organization on this singular topic. If there is an instance where it would be split, you have a conflict of interest and you need to recuse yourself from the conversation because your allegiance is split. This means a board member can never use information obtained as a member for personal gain, but must act in the best interest of the organization. If the world abided by that more consistently, it would be a better place. Here, we need to cast aside any personal or professional interests and place the interests of the nonprofit ahead of ourselves as individuals. We respect the confidentiality of the organization's affairs, and we don't disclose them to outside individuals. What's discussed here, unless it becomes public and public record or is in an open meetings discussion, you don't have to go and run around the world and tell everybody what you talked about in a meeting. In fact, it's generally in your best interest not to, because oftentimes things that are discussed here are still in discussion. They're still in conversation. And it's different there's a huge difference between asking for outside information or input from trusted people that the board has requested and asking for input from people that the board would not be comfortable advising on the nature or the matter. And of course, we want to act in good faith. We want to act honestly with faithfulness to your duties and obligations and to not attempt to take advantage of the corporation, the organization, whatever form of organization it is. You have a duty to serve the organization and make decisions that are in the best interest, even if it may not be personally beneficial to you. That is a duty of loyalty. Does that make sense? Cool. This is a game that I like to call Name That Conflict. I'm gonna hit them pretty swiftly, but these are conflict of interest opportunities. So like the first one, wow, that is really small. I'm so sorry. Scenario one would be, I Do Good is a nonprofit organization, requires competitive bidding on purchases of more than $1,000. Joe Moreprint, board member, owns a printing company and receives the $5,000 contract for the biannual newsletter. No other bids are solicited. Was there a conflict of interest?
Yeah.
Shockingly, yes, that is exactly how conflict of interest works. Somebody had a personal stake and personally benefited from a decision of the organization and broke procedure and protocol in order to do so. There we go. Pets and More Animal Shelter seeking an accounting firm to do their annual audit. Betty Beancounter, board member, bids on the 3-year contract. Is there a conflict of interest?
Yes.
Expand on it.
Well, she
There's
has
only
to
a
declare
conflict
that.
if she votes on herself. She can't vote on your
Yes, to
vote.
recuse.
There is a conflict
A
of interest.
conflict of interest,
They must
absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, they must recuse themselves
Yeah.
from the decision. If she gets the contract, that is not necessarily conflict of interest. Or I'm sorry, it's not necessarily wrong. There is a conflict of interest, therefore they must remove themselves from the conversation. I'm gonna hit this last one. A funder or donor is requesting endorsement on a referendum to support increased taxes for youth programs. Rex Creation, a member of Community Center Board, is politically opposed to the tax increase despite its benefit for the center. What, is there a conflict of interest here?
No.
Yes.
No,
Expand.
as an individual, that person is entitled to have their own opinion about things and to vote their way. They can express their opinion at the board. The rest of the board can say, are you crazy? This is going to help us. But it's not a conflict of interest to disagree with others on the board.
Precisely, because they don't have any personal gain.
Right.
That's the defining characteristic of conflict of interest, is do I personally gain from this decision in some way, shape, or form? That's at the crux of conflict of interest. So I can drum up 1,000 scenarios, but at the end of it all, if you believe that there's a conflict of interest, it is your obligation to make note of that to the room and to recuse yourself from the conversation completely. And then finally, duty of obedience, and then we'll wrap it up. This requires board members to be faithful to the organization's mission. They are not permitted to act in a way that is inconsistent with the central goals of the organization, right? A basis for this rule lies in the public's trust that the organization will manage donated funds to advance the organization's mission instead of doing other who knows what with it, right? This duty also requires board members to obey the law and the organization's internal rules and regulations. So a duty of obedience means that you are complying with federal, state, and local laws and regulations. That's a duty of obedience. It's a duty of good faith. You also have a duty of obedience to know and ensure that all required taxes are paid in a timely manner and timely filing of all required annual state and federal returns. I've talked to some organizations who didn't file for 3 years, and I went, what are you doing? Oh, no, that's so bad. You can't do that. Even though they were absolutely mandated to ensure donated funds are used in accordance with the restrictions of the giver if there were restrictions that were agreed upon, and remaining faithful to the organization's vision and mission. My favorite example of that last one is Google used to have the tagline, "Don't be evil." That was their vision, that was their mission. They changed that because some members in the team said, I'm not confident that's accurate. And so instead of moving back towards not being evil, they said, we'll just remove it as a vision and mission. But the point being, they were acting in a way that was antithetical to their mission and vision. So, hello. So here's the question that I would consider you guys think on and consider today, into tomorrow, into perpetuating. What is one change you would like to see this board make? You don't need to say it out loud right now, but what is a change that you think would benefit the board and the organization, and critically, the community that you serve, if you were to make that change? I strongly advise you take some time today into tomorrow to think about it and discuss this as a board and as a collective. All that being said, I know we've hit a lot. This is a lot of information. It's a lot to jam pack in a short period of time. I'm so sorry if we hit so much information and you forget a couple of things. That's why I'm sending you the slideshow after, so you have all of the notes necessary. And it's also why we have recorded the meeting as well. I'm going to hang around for a few minutes as long as I'm allowed and able for any questions that you might have. If you're kicking me out, that's fine. But I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to be here. We have additional trainings if you need them, if you need additional resources, not just as a member of NICNE, but the Culture Craft. I just love working with nonprofits. I love working with SILS and anybody who supports SILS. I'm so grateful for the work that you all do. It's why I take this as seriously as I do. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for taking steps to be a really healthy operative board. I appreciate it. People in my life appreciate it. So yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Good. Thank you, everybody. And I guess that's the chair. I'll officially adjourn our retreat session. Woo! And we'll see you all tomorrow, promptly at 10:30 to begin our official board meeting.
Nice to meet you.
Have a good night, all.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Hi, Paul. Hi, Emily.
Bye.
Bye, guys.